Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our regular board meeting on October the 17th. If you wouldn't mind joining us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Now, if you will join us and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is wonderful to see so many people coming out this evening. I would like to ask the board if they've got any questions of staff this evening. Commissioner Munger?
Sure. Question for Bobby. Mr. Williams, we received a recent email about the Colonial Pipeline NCDEQ public comments and request for public hearing that is open through October 24th, 2022. Can you give us an update on what we are doing related to these items?
Yeah, we got that information, I guess, late Friday. Did a little bit of research. They put out a request for 30-day public comment on September 23rd. Last month when they were here with DEQ, they mentioned going for a permit for a wastewater treatment plant on site. And so this basically is DEQ's process, 30-day public comment period, runs through 11/59 on October 24th, so one more week. And they can do comments via mail or via email at the public comments at diener.gov. And that is on our website. We put it out on social media, and then we've emailed folks who request to be notified related to Colonial Pipeline. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I just want to implore everyone here, please fill out those comments. This is very important to us.
Commissioner Kovacs, started to say Kidwell.
You just like to call me Kid Kovacs. Anthony or Bobby, it's probably Bobby, I would like to know if we could have an update on Town Hall.
Yes, we figured we probably would start giving like monthly updates of activities or updates as there are things to report on. Some of these things, there won't be a ton of progress within the next month or so, but since you guys kind of told us to get going again at the second meeting in September, we've gotten the project team back together. We've resumed the schematic design phase. We're updating the advanced planning. We had a couple departments that weren't factored into the original scope of the building, so we've met with them. We've got one more department that we're meeting with to try to project space in the building to accommodate them. We've got a phase one environmental that's getting underway this week, and then you may have noticed some cones and some folks out in the road doing property surveys. So we're doing the things that we need to do to get the site ready to figure out how and where the building's going to be. We've also been in touch with engineering, gone through a TIA determination, initiated discussion with DOT there. And then we're also looking at public input on the new building, and specifically looking at a listening session sometime early November. Right now we're thinking November 2nd for that, and then having a kind of an online open-ended survey that would follow that, maybe run through the middle of November. And either the second meeting in November or the first meeting in December, have the consultants come back and share the feedback that we've heard with the board. So welcome any thoughts, feedback on that, but that's sort of our plan right now.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boone?
Yes,
Oh, Commissioner Kovacs?
Anthony, can you please give us an update on what the topic of our pre-meeting, last meeting on the Town Center project, North State?
I was gonna give that one Bobby too. I'm kidding.
Walk away on that.
Come on, Bobby.
So on the North State Town Center project, the board had asked for a legal opinion from the town attorney. I think October 10th, she gave that legal opinion. And then on October 10th, well, she gave you a legal opinion on October 10th. The board had asked for a second opinion, so we reached out to the UNC School of Government And the first person we talked to was Christina Wilson. And Christina Wilson sort of they all specialize in different things, but one that she specifically specializes in is board procedures. And on that call was myself, Commissioner Kovacs, Commissioner Phillips, and Commissioner Kidwell to seek a second opinion on some board procedural matters. And then today, of course, we'd sent an email out early in the week to Adam Lovelady, I think Dave Owens, and Jim Joyce to seek a second opinion on the vesting questions related to that project. We actually got off a call within the last 2 or 3 hours. We spoke to Adam Lovelady on the vesting issue. He's still doing some research because we sent him all the documents, so he still has to come back with some information to hopefully give us some direction. And we may be coming back to the board, hopefully by next week, to look at some possible options that are available. And then, I'm sorry, one more. We have a meeting set up tomorrow. I got to remember all the names myself. Commissioner Boone, Commissioner Kovacs, and the mayor with North State developers. I'm not sure who all. I think David Dupree and Shane Siegel and possibly others, to talk about sort of the residential versus non-residential square footage and see if there can be some movement in that.
So for a follow-up with that, my next question is for Ms. Sloop. Kind of after getting that second opinion, one of my questions was if, do you, in your legal opinion, do you believe that staff had the legal authority to administratively approve less square footage of retail than the motion stated?
So as previously discussed, the motion referred back specifically to the plans that were in the agenda package. None of those plans included a specific reference to commercial space. Rather, they referenced non-residential space and were clearly marked with a note that said that that space may include commercial space. So yes, I do believe that staff was in their authority to approve it.
Indication of 12,000 was referred to after the indication of the plan. So there was an actual.
So it basically said, and I have a copy of it here, it said, with those provisions, it is reasonable and in the public interest to rezone 9.947 acres as described in Attachment B of the staff report from TCNR and general residential to town center mixed-use conditional district rezoning as provided in our packet and dated January 5th, 2021. To permit 12,000 square feet of commercial space. Then it goes on to list several things that could not be included in that space. But if you read the plan dated January 5th, 2021, it very specifically depicts 12,000 of non-residential and has a note that says that that non-residential may include commercial space.
Okay, so where we're at with the second opinion that we got, and we're still waiting on a second opinion, is there anything that we as the board can do right now to kind of figure this out without time continuing to move?
So as previously discussed in an email that I sent to the board, there are several site-specific vesting plans that have been approved under our ordinance, and that gives 2 years of vested rights. That would be a conditional rezoning district as well as approvals of subdivision plans. So those are site-specific vesting plans, and again, that gives 2 years of vested rights.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Boone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to Anthony Roberts. The traffic light on 21 and North Down lanes, those bags have been on those lights for at least a month. Any idea when they're going to be okay? Stephen, how are you?
Hey, good evening. So the intersection of 21 at North Downs. So the town is partnering with NCDOT to get that signal installed. NCDOT has indicated that some of the equipment is up and in, but they are waiting for a fence to be relocated, as well as additional electrical equipment to come in to their contractors so they can continue with that installation. I have not received an estimated completion date from them. Continue to ask them for that.
All right, if you could continue to keep us updated on that, I really appreciate it.
Sure, will do.
Give another call, that would be great too. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Trott, don't go anywhere, because I do have a couple of questions for you as well. The first one, last week, we had I've had a lot of emails, calls, texts around the light at exit 23. I'm not sure if it's 21 and Gilead, or if it's the light right in the interchange coming off of the interstate. Has NCD finally come out and taken a look at that, and is there any update?
Sure. So we also received calls and emails about additional queuing that folks observed and partook in, I guess, last week. As we understand, DOT came out late last week and looked at it and checked everything out to see if it was working properly. They let us know that the contractor is planning to implement the next phase of signal items as part of the 21 Gilead and interchange project, hopefully to be done this week. And in that, changes to the signal system are anticipated, what they call temporary signals. These are signals that go in temporarily as part of the construction so that things can be moved out of the way and relocated. They're hopeful with that and a change in technology that the congestion will be reduced somewhat in that area. The project is under construction, so there'll probably be some pain as it moves forward. There's a project out there for a reason. It's because improvements are needed. So I would expect, queuing to continue to be poor during the rest of the construction.
So the lights that they currently have hanging that are bagged, are the temporary lights?
That's probably the next phase, yeah. So they'll take the current ones out of service, but they have to have other ones up to be able to do that.
Okay. And I guess the last question, I don't know who it's for, is Main Street giving us an update on Main Street and where we currently are? I see two folks moving my way, so Stephen, you've lucked up, it's not you. Good evening. So could we get an update on the Main Street project, where we currently are, and then the communication that we're having with the businesses so that everyone's aware of parking, et cetera?
Sure, I'll tackle the kind of the 10,000-foot view of the project as a whole. As of the beginning of this month, both time and billings were at about 60% complete with the project. Our hope is that within the next couple weeks, I would say 2 to 3 weeks, everything from Greenway south will be 100% complete. Water and sewer at this time, many of you have already seen, they're kind of out in front, so they are already up in the area of the northern roundabout. They are done from Bigham south, with the exception of a few tie-ins, residential tie-ins and commercial tie-ins that they have left to do. The hope is that by the end of this calendar year, water and sewer will be completely done. So then we'll only have roadway items remaining. Right now, for the next 2 to 3 weeks, they will be working between Huntersville Concord and Greenway to finish that section. And then they'll just move in a northerly fashion on up North Main to their roundabout and finish the project up on this end.
Okay, great.
So to follow up with the communications piece, on October the 3rd, we received the notice of intent to move forward with the current work that we have from STV. On October 4th, I notified the board of that intent. They said we would know by the end of the week. Actually, we were notified within 24 hours, so I notified the board and the downtown businesses on October 5th. And that downtown email list has 30-plus businesses. It actually includes some on Old Statesville Road, not just Main Street. On the same day, we posted notice to social media, traditional media, our website, and then the analytics. So we reached out. So basically, within 2 days, we've sent notification to the most affected businesses of the intent that the work would begin today, with the notice that it would be approximately 21 days of intense work, and as Mr. Fox has referenced, so that when that is done, it is done. And we won't have to come back like we're doing now. We can only do parts, and now that all those pieces are done, This is the final piece to put everything together.
Okay, so 21 days, is there a,
The estimated time, depending on weather.
okay, and are there any, I mean, is that a kind of a drop dead date for them, or is there any fines associated with going past 21 days?
No, on this particular part of the project, there is no liquidated damages or intermediate contract times. So this is just an estimated time of when. And for the businesses, we expect to keep them open as much as we can. Well, they'll be open. We expect to keep the sidewalk and everything open as much as we can, but of course, safety is paramount, so we need to make sure that people going in and out of the businesses are safe. And if conditions warrant, then we'll, allow that front access.
And have we found parking? I mean, are we still doing signage, et cetera, for the
Yes.
for parking,
Yeah,
public parking?
The sign should still be out. With this closure, where only the few on-street parking spaces that were left, well, there's 6 or 8, they're the only ones that are impacted by this closure. So the Main Street parking lot is still open. Maxwell is open this time, so it should be a lot less of a burden than when we had Huntersville Concord closed.
Okay, well, great, thank you. Are there any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, thank you so much. We will now move on into our public comments, requests for presentations, and the first item on the agenda is a presentation from our 150th Anniversary Committee. Mr. James, we're so excited to hear from you this evening.
Well, I'm excited to be here. I'll ask anyone from the committee to join me up front. I am very embarrassed to be here in a T-shirt, but Michael Jaycox made me. I'm a funeral director. I literally have nightmares where I'm standing in a funeral and look down and I'm wearing this. Michael's in trouble. But we have a great committee. We are so excited. For those of you who don't know, Huntersville turns 150 next year. So 2023, it starts with an S. It's really long, and I haven't gotten good at saying it, so we call it the 150th. That's right. That's why we have them. So we have divided our group up. Our committee has been working all year and will continue to work this year to plan for next year. We've divided into an event group, a history gathering group, and public relations group. So our goal is to educate folks on a lot of history and what's happening in Huntersville and what has happened in Huntersville and how we got to where we are today and why is the town named Huntersville, simple things like that. But to have a lot of really fun events along with that, trying to involve kids, the elderly, and everywhere in between to reach out. We want to make sure that every entity is involved. So if you're a business or if you're a civic organization, or just a family, we want to make sure that they've had the opportunity to be included in this celebration. So thank you all for your resources that you've been so generous to give us. And I'm going to let our group share what's happening.
Hi guys, my name's Maureen. I'm super excited to be working with this group for Huntersville's 150th anniversary next year. I am the chair of the events planning committee, so I wanted to kind of share with you guys what we have going on here. You know, help me.
I think Kim can.
Okay, so first thing we're gonna do, we're actually gonna kick it off at the end of this year. So on New Year's Eve, this year, 2022, we're gonna kick off what we call a New Year's Eve on Ice at Burkdale Village. It's December 31st, 2022, from 10 a.m. to noon, with activities like ice skating, live music, balloon twisters, face painting, tons of family-friendly opportunities for you guys to all come out. Stilt walkers, magicians, and then we're gonna kind of have a special noon countdown for our little friends who sometimes don't make it to midnight, where we're gonna do some streamer cannons, so we're gonna make it a really fun event. And that's on New Year's Eve this year from 10 a.m. to noon. And in February, which is actually technically Huntersville's birthday, we're going to throw a happy birthday Huntersville at the Huntersville Recreational Center. It is going to be February 25th from 2 to 4 p.m. We're going to invite some local bakeries to have kind of like a cake-off for a cake decorating contest. We're also, again, super fun, family-friendly forward activities with engaging DJs, princesses and superhero photo ops, a photo booth for some, adult stuff that, you want to take some good pictures there. Again, we're going to do a fun balloon drop to sort of commemorate that day, and that's on February 25th from 2 to 4 p.m. And then lastly, we're going to go ahead, we haven't quite named it yet. We have some names that we're playing with, but we're going to do a festival in the fall on September 23rd, 2023. That's going to be a longer one, kind of like an all-day event from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., kind of modeled after what Laketoberfest did this past weekend. We're going to have 2 acoustic band, followed by headliner Blue Monday. We're going to do a kids zone with bounce houses, face painting, balloon twisting, breweries and food trucks, and just lots and lots more. So we're really, really excited. We're going to cap off that evening with an amazing fireworks display. So we're very, very excited about that. So if you know of anyone, or if you want to pop up and participate in these events next year, just let us know. And if you want to see anything different or want to let me know what you want to do, I can make it work. So I'm super excited for next year. Thank you guys so much.
Hello, my name is Sam Harper. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. I'm here to represent the History Gathering Committee. We've been hard at work collecting a lot of information about things in the town, such as schools, churches, and other important institutions and peoples of the town. And we are collecting a list of 150 important institutions and people in the town. And alongside the names we have collected, we will be releasing a form to the public at an undetermined time. And this is really important because we need to make sure that not only will this celebration be successful in what we have gathered for the history, because it's the 150th, it's very important we have that base, but celebrations in the future will also be successful because we have that base to build all our understanding of. I want to thank you all for being here today.
Finally, my name is Eric Rolls. I get a chance to spearhead the PR committee, and the question, of course, is how do you build momentum around such an important moment in our history? And so what you'll see over this next year is a barrage of marketing and a barrage of messages and images to be able to remind us again about this historic time in Huntersville history. And so everything from banners that you will see that will align, of course, our roads, to really a bunch of swag that you'll find in different kind of contexts, whether it's in some of our public events where we can continue to be out there to be able to remind them that this is a celebration. The other thing that we're going to be able to do is, again, how do you build momentum around a movement, and that is to be able to do it not only with punctuated events, but also with our business owners and with our community members. And so we are in the process, of course, working and reaching out to our local businesses to be able to see how they would want to be involved in a 150-year celebration. For example, perhaps a pizza company wants to be able to say, you know what, for this year, this is going to be our 150 anniversary special, $1.50 for this. And so you'll see a lot of things being pulled off of that 150 combinations that we'll get a chance to be able to use. Finally, we want to be able to have things that last for quite some time, and one of those is some idea of some murals, and some murals that would last, but instead of putting it onto a brick wall, the idea of a beautiful mural or combinations of murals that could actually be transported in different places. And so instead of taking over a brick wall, perhaps some fabric murals that can then be transported from one place to the other. We're in the process of creating something great. We're in the process of creating a celebration that has been taking us 150 years to get here. And we're excited about it. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Any questions?
I'm going to make them wear T-shirts. And I have them right here.
And shorts.
So I just want to say that this has been more than a year now in the making. And this board has worked tirelessly. And this, I just cannot say enough. I've dropped in on them a few times throughout the year. And the work that you all are doing is just incredible. And I cannot wait to celebrate with you as we have our 150th anniversary, or like I like to call it, our birthday, because we only turn 150 once. But it's a wonderful anniversary, and it's a wonderful time to celebrate everything that is Huntersville. And you all just really exude that. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you. Oh, yes, sir. We're getting ready.
Sorry, if you've got a question for the committee, I would encourage you to take it out into the lobby.
That would be great. Thank you all. We are now going to move into our presentation for World Polio Day. And I don't know who from Rotary is here to join me. Aha. Come right on up here. Wait, I need these glasses. I do it every time. You all are so fabulous. Thank you for joining me up here. So, whereas Rotary is a global network of neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who unite and take action to create lasting change in communities across the globe. And whereas the Rotary motto, service above self, inspires members to provide humanitarian service, follow high ethical standards, and promote goodwill and peace in the world. And whereas Rotary in 1985 launched Polio Plus, and in 1988 helped establish the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, which today includes the World Health Organization, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, UNICEF, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to immunize the children of the world against polio. And whereas polio cases have dropped by 99.9% since 1988, and the world stands on the threshold of eradicating the disease. And whereas to date, Rotary has contributed more than $2.4 billion and countless volunteer hours to protecting nearly 3 billion children in 122 countries. And whereas Rotary is working to raise an additional $50 million per year, which will be leveraged for maximum impact by an additional $100 million annually from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And whereas these efforts are providing much-needed operational support, medical staff, laboratory equipment, and educational materials for health workers and parents. And whereas, in addition, Rotary has played a major role in decisions by donor governments to contribute more than $10 billion to the effort. And whereas there are over 1.4 million Rotary members in 46,000 clubs throughout the world that sponsor service projects to address such critical issues as poverty, disease, hunger, illiteracy, and the environment in their local communities and abroad. Now, therefore, I, Melinda Bales, Mayor of Huntersville, do hereby proclaim October the 24th of 2022 as World Polio Day in Huntersville, North Carolina, and encourage all citizens to join me and Rotary International in the fight for a polio-free world.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
I have to tell you, we are truly blessed in our community. We have 3 Rotary clubs in Lake Norman, and 2 of those are right here in Huntersville, and they do such fabulous work. So huge thank you to you guys. We will now move on to 5C, and it is a Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools update presentation. Ms. Cheek? I have to tell you, I was chatting with Ms. Cheek about 20th day numbers and where our schools were, and she said, I'm in the middle of preparing to do a presentation in Cornelius. And I said, oh, well, I would love for you to come and do an update presentation for us and our board. So thank you for your willingness to work that in your schedule.
Absolutely, and I'm going to introduce my colleague. Actually, I guess he's my employee, I don't know. He's a staff member for CMS Building Services, Dennis Lacaria. Y'all's staff probably knows Dennis fairly well because he does a lot with the building services and land and real estate. So let's start by saying thank you to the town for everything that you all do to help make our schools function better, from your town staff to your police department and to all the citizens in town. We are so blessed in Lake Norman. I try to kind of keep this a secret from my colleagues in the south or the rest of the county, but North Mecklenburg area supports its schools. The clubs, the Rotaries, the Kiwanis, all those organizations, they support these schools up here. And I don't want to talk about the fact that they don't really get that same kind of support down in the rest of the county, but we're really blessed up here. So let's just start with day 20 numbers and just a little bit of a dialogue about all the schools that interact with Huntersville. Y'all have several schools that are here in your town limits, but your students from Huntersville also go to school to 3 schools in Cornelius. I did not include an update on the schools that are magnet programs that students from Huntersville have chosen to go to from throughout the county, because there's just too many of them. We've got kids going all over the county to different specialized programs. But I'm happy to get you guys more information about those as if you have any questions. Let's just start at the top of the county, or of the area, and that's Huff High School. Huff High School actually has had a great year. They became an A school. That's a pretty big deal for a high school to become an A school ranked in North Carolina. They have right now got 2,518 students attending. I think Huntersville students make up about 35% of the student body at Huff at this point. One of the things they just did that I thought was really cool, if any of you guys ever were in college and did sorority rush, they did club rush. And they had all the school clubs come and present, and then students rushed to them and decided which club. Over 40 clubs participated, and we all know that if students have a club and a smaller group of people to interact with, that they do better. It's great for their mental health. Huff is still very engaged in the Sources of Strength program, which is a mental health and suicide prevention program, because they have dealt with a few suicides over the past few years. Coming down North Meck High School, and we'll talk a little bit about facilities. We're going to wait till the end to talk about facilities, just so I don't mix it up. But North Meck has 2,186 children. We had a big influx of kids, I think, in the International Baccalaureate program, but North Meck also offers auto tech, culinary, cosmetology, horticulture, or it's not called horticulture anymore. It's called agribusiness, and I'm missing one. Agribusiness, no, that's it. And so those are the career technical programs that are offered at North Meck High School, and a lot of people don't realize that we do have those kind of programs. A student can graduate from the North Meck Auto Tech program and go out and make $70,000 a year as an auto mechanic, and those programs are supported by a lot of partnerships. Hendricks Automotive donated a lot of the equipment for that state-of-the-art facility for students to be taught in. That'll bring another little issue up, but one of our biggest problems right now is employing teachers from the trades, because North Carolina Department of Public Instruction doesn't have the most friendly entry pathway for people with non-traditional backgrounds. So trades are very hard for us to staff. But North Meck is our school. Huff is fully staffed. North Meck is our school in the area that's still struggling a little bit with staffing, but all the classrooms are full of teachers right now. They're using guest teachers to support that. Let's go over to Hopewell. Hopewell has 1,755 scholars attending. They have been recognized as a Cambridge demonstration program, so other Cambridge schools from throughout the country are coming to see how it's done. They have so many things going on. The biggest one I will say is, if you can have some free time on Saturday in the great sunny fall weather, please go into the Titanium Band's competition that's going to be held at Hopewell and support them. Their band has been winning competitions everywhere they go, and they're just phenomenal. So if you're a bit of a music or a band geek like me, I urge you to go support them. But Hopewell has had a great start to their school year. The next school I'm going to talk about is a newer one, North Academy of World Languages. It's a K-8 school sitting on the old J.M. Alexander property. There are 683 scholars from kindergarten through 6th grade. The principal, Ms. Ferguson, just won the North Zone Principal of the Year award, and I had the honor of doing a ribbon cutting. The school's been open for a couple years, but we did not have ribbon cuttings and new opening ceremonies during COVID, so we just celebrated that. They have teachers that have just arrived from Germany that are part of their teaching visiting staff, and I'm thinking that's all for them. kind of going through my list here. J.M. Alexander has a principal named Miss Lanier. She has really been working hard on working on culture and just the overall empowerment of the school and aligning with standards. J.M. Alexander has 783 scholars, and part of them do participate in the International Baccalaureate Magnet Program. They tried something new this year to get students motivated and parents engaged before school started. They had open house, and they called it Camp JMA, and that was to get people engaged in the school. Francis Bradley has a new principal, but he's not new to North Mecklenburg area. He was the AP at Hopewell, and we felt that he was a great fit for the school, and it also just tied that feeder pattern together. Mr. Vandesal is down there now. They just had a big fall pep rally. They sent me video, and but I'm not going to show it, but it's pretty funny. And he has dressed in teal almost every day of school because that's the color for Bradley Middle School, the Mavericks. Bailey Middle School has a pretty significant number of kids from Huntersville in attendance. The kids from the Huntersville Elementary and J.V. Washam boundaries go there. Bailey has been recognized as a school in the top 1% of North Carolina for growth in 2021-2022. It's the 8th straight year they've exceeded growth, and they are, in my opinion, the best middle school in North Carolina. Their numbers prove it. Now let's get down to some of our elementary schools. Let's go over, we will start with Barnett. I'm going to the alphabet here. Barnett exceeded growth for the 3rd year. Oh, I didn't mention Bailey. That's pretty significant for the numbers at those two schools. I need to mention that. Backtrack a minute. Bradley has 1,064 scholars in 6th through 8th grade. That's getting big. But Bradley has 1,326. That's huge and overcrowded. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Barnett exceeded growth for the 3rd year, and just so that you guys are understanding, North Carolina rates schools on performance and growth. If you have a student that comes to school in, let's say, 1st grade and is struggling with reading, they may be reading on a kindergarten level or a lower level. So the goal is proficiency is if the student is at grade level. Growth is how far you grew them. We're supposed to grow them 1 year at each school year. But when schools exceed growth, that means they grew them more than a year, which means we're catching kids up and we're trying to close those outcomes and achievement gaps. So Barnett had a good year. They have 687 scholars in K through 5. We'll skip Cornelius and we'll skip those. Grand Oak, lots to celebrate. They exceeded growth on their state scores as well. They've been hosting a Dad's Male Role Model Day and trying to get more parent engagement at that school. Grand Oak has 479 scholars in attendance. Grand Oak had the 2nd highest elementary school growth in CMS. So they're taking their kids and they're moving the needle. They're also having their Halloween movie night this weekend. Let's see, Huntersville Elementary. Huntersville Elementary is the most crowded elementary school we have in the area, 878 scholars. Huntersville has had a great start to the year. They're continuing a partnership with Davidson College Presbyterian Church to support their Amigos program. They've had volunteers from the church, DCPC. They've had volunteers from the church donate book bags for those students, and they're also bringing in meal packs to send home with kids that need meal support over the weekends. And they're working on a Heroes of Huntersville group. J.V. Washam. So J.V. Washam is in Cornelius, but the children that are in Huntersville residents from Cambridge Grove and Hampton Ridge in that area attend. J.V. Washam has 810 kids, and they also exceeded their growth score with a 4-fold increase. And the nice thing, when I talk about how many of our schools have great partnerships, Cornelius Police Department, Bailey's Glen, and several churches, Grace Covenant Mount Zion, also support that school. And they do have a population there that does not have meal support, and they have significant childhood nutrition concerns. So they provide meal support for those students to send home a bag of food for the family over the weekend. Long Creek Elementary. Long Creek is an creative arts magnet. There's 476 kids attending. They've implemented some new behavior modification programs, and they just hosted their curriculum night. And let me see if there's anything else exciting. International Dot Day. They talked about the book called The Dot. Torrance Creek has 707 scholars. They just had their first Man on Board event the end of September, where dads, male community members, and grandfathers come to morning arrival and welcome students to just try to increase the presence of people in the school. They are also working with the Allegro program at the school. And then we have Trillium Springs, which I know we're going to talk about some more in a minute. Trillium Springs has 187 students. It's a full Montessori school, K through 6 now, K through 6. There's 187 students there. Trillium Springs is actually located in the building that was called Long Creek for a zillion years, many, many, many years. So that's kind of where we are with our schools and the numbers. Oh, and I didn't mention, the one I didn't mention was Marankas campus. We do have 202 students attending the early college program at the Marankas campus for Central Piedmont. I think that's all the schools. That's a lot. When I go to Cornelius, it's just 3 or 4, so this is a lot. So I'm going to bring Dennis up here. We're going to talk a little bit about what's next. So you heard a few of those numbers were very high. Huntersville Elementary, Cornelius Elementary, and North Meck High School, all are schools that are old enough that Mayor Washam attended them when he was a child, and a lot of people in this area attended those schools. So the buildings are old, they're worn out, and there comes a time when a building has reached a point where doing a renovation is not cost effective. Usually that's at about the 80% tipping point. If the cost of renovations is 80% of a cost of a new building, you go ahead and you just build a new building. So I'm going to have Dennis talk a little bit about projects that are likely to be on the bond based on these new numbers. I will share these numbers with you in a spreadsheet when that's available. I got raw data that I had to pull out of a spreadsheet of 176 schools the other day. So we'll send that to you, and it'll have the number of classrooms, the number of special classes that each school might house, because even if they only have 479 students, they might have 10 classrooms of pre-K and special needs type of courses. So we'll have that to you when it's available in about a week. I'm going to let you talk about the bond.
All right, thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the town, thank you for the opportunity. So as many folks are well aware, there was a bond referendum that passed successfully in 2017, and we are getting ready to close that out, and we are moving through the process to line up for a general obligation bond referendum in November 2023. And as part of that, we're doing some community engagement and feedback around a draft plan, and we are actually incorporating changes based on the feedback as we go and revising that plan. And so we're taking into account also student enrollment, staff utilization, facility condition updates. But the other thing that we're doing that's different with this capital plan than anything else we've done previously is a real explicit look at equity and the classroom environment. Equity's always been a piece of the work that we've done, but it's never been as explicitly called out as we're doing in this particular plan. And what we're looking at are really the things that beyond condition of the facility itself, but also the reality that if you have a classroom where we're not getting fresh air exchanges, if there's a classroom where you've got elementary school students without windows throughout the course of their instructional day, so they don't see daylight unless they're at recess or lunch or they've gone to a special. Those rooms where we don't have fresh air in exchange, they're typically cooled then or heated with fan coil units, which are noisy. And so the student who's sitting underneath that fan coil unit is negatively impacted. And that actually has a deleterious impact on what we're doing in the classroom. So sort of a Hippocratic oath for education, the classroom should first do no harm. But if we're really doing this well, we can actually have buildings and classrooms that propel teaching and learning. So that is another lens that's being overlaid on the pure condition and age of a facility, but also looking at things from an equity lens. And so doing that, it actually shifts some things. It makes something that maybe once we thought would have been an addition or renovation project, actually a replacement project. It also then changes where a project may score on a list as we're taking all of those components and pieces into consideration. So another example of where things are actively changing because of feedback is we have heard overwhelmingly to date from the community that they do not support neighborhood K-8 schools. So the conversation is turned on. We are okay with K-8 schools for programmatic purposes, but not for neighborhood schools. So a draft plan had an iteration that involved K-8 schools to relieve some of these other overcrowded situations that we have in North County. Hearing this feedback, if that continues to be borne out by the rest of the conversations that we have, would then say instead of looking at K-8 opportunities, we need to identify elementary school sites and middle school sites then to relieve these situations. And so we do have land bank sites in North County. It's a luxury that we have that we don't really have anywhere else. So the opportunity to build an elementary school at Davidson East, build a middle school on Stumptown Road at Monteith Park, and be able then to replace Huntersville Elementary School, replace North Mecklenburg High School. Those things completely change the character, how education happens, and also the capacity, because you're replacing those older, smaller schools with newer, larger baseline schools, and we're picking up these new relief projects. And so it's my expectation, again, depending on the amount of money that Mecklenburg County provides to us, because I think what's important to note is that unlike towns and cities and counties, the Board of Education has no ability to raise its own funds, no taxing authority, no millage rate, nothing like that. So the vast majority of our operating dollars comes from the state of North Carolina. The next largest chunk comes from Mecklenburg County, and then there's a small portion from the federal government with all sorts of strings attached, and that's what pays for the teachers and keeps the lights on. On the capital side, whenever we build or renovate or replace schools, we have been wholly dependent on Mecklenburg County and the voters approving bond referendums since the late 90s. The state of North Carolina has provided no capital funding. The federal government has made access for certain things, like through ARPA, for improving HVAC systems, but nothing that really takes into consideration the wholesale replacement or upgrade of a facility. So it's incumbent upon us then to do this work with the community, come forward with a bond that then passes, and if we are in the $2 to $2.5 billion range, which is what we're trying to forecast and convince our partners in Mecklenburg County to support, then the projects that I've outlined for Huntersville and North County should all come to pass.
With one addition, he forgot Cornelius.
Replacement of Cornelius Elementary School would
a
also be replaced,
priority.
right?
Cornelius was actually one of the 21 schools during COVID that we had air exchange and air quality issues that got some of the ARPA money to do a ionic bipolarization unit to try to improve the air quality, but it is one of the schools with the worst air quality in the county. So it is on the replacement list as well. So basically at this moment, where we are, and the board hasn't approved this, we haven't even seen the final plan because the data has to go in there from the overcrowding. But with Bailey at the level it is, I didn't mention Davidson Elementary, but Davidson Elementary is up 135 students, and there's 1,171 students in their K-8 program. They jumped enormously. So, but if you pulled those kindergarten, or those 6th, 7th, and 8th graders out and sent them back to Bailey, you would be 600, 700 students over capacity. So then you would need to move some kids back to the new proposed school. And thankful for the county commission several years ago to land bank 4 sites in northern Mecklenburg County. The Stumptown site is one of those. So I guess that's kind of where we are. I guess, and then any other questions?
So you feel that, maybe this is from Dennis, Huntersville Elementary and North Meck look like they would get replaced. In addition to that, a new middle school and a new elementary school in the bond package.
Replacement for Cornelius
And
in
then
the bond package. If we're in that $2 to $2.5 billion range, then I would, again, based on where we are today, refining the plan, putting new data in, it would be my expectation that those would be priority projects.
And do you have any guesstimate regarding a time frame? Are we looking at 7 years out, 2 years out?
So the reality of it is we're trying to have some conversations with Mecklenburg County government about advancing some dollars for planning purposes. We're working very intentionally and very closely with town staff here and with town staff in Cornelius similarly around the same sort of conversations about what the downtown feels like and how we should respond as an entity. And so we're trying to get some planning dollars early so that we can go into some design and be ready out of the gate. Not sure how that's going to resolve, but typically, if that doesn't happen, typically we would see the bond referendum passing in November 2023, and then the funds being available the 1st of 2024. And so we could deliver some projects as early as 2025. It's just going to depend on which, when, and what the sort of priority order is.
And I think the plan, just there would be on-site replacements of the 3 schools that we've mentioned. And the Davidson East School, while we're calling it Davidson East, because that's the location of it, it would actually impact Huntersville, J.V. Washam, and Davidson elementary boundaries because of where it's located on, it's out at Highway 73 near Bradford Park in that vicinity out there. So that's kind of a confluence of students out there. So it would provide relief to all of those overcrowded schools. So any questions?
Commissioner Kovacs?
I'm glad to have someone from CMS here because I have lots of questions and we haven't had anybody here since I've been on the board. When you send those numbers, could you also include how many students at North Mech and at Hopewell are actually Huntersville students?
I would do that, and I'll also include how many students at Bailey, Huff, and J.V. Washam are Huntersville students, because you have students coming in and out of Huntersville.
I know, Hopewell and North Mech concerned me the most, because, I mean, you did tell us about Huff, but North Mech, I know there's actually a pretty small amount of Huntersville students. So yes, please just include those with the numbers and the capacity rates, because I'm quite curious. I know that Huntersville went up over 100 students than what they expected, so I can only imagine their capacity rate.
The school has 39 classrooms, so its actual capacity is around 800. So they are about 80 students, 80 to 90 students over. We saw a big influx from the McCord Road developments that were approved by Huntersville.
So I was reading an article that during a MEAC meeting, it was quoted that the town of Huntersville lost 100 points on the rubric due to Senate Bill 514 and our ability to create a municipal charter. And I just wanted to verify from what you guys are just saying, it doesn't seem like that's pushing us off the list to build, or is it?
No, it's a factor, but because there are so many other weights, for example, the educational environment piece is the single biggest weight, and that's a 500 point. And so it's a function of how many points are awarded each project in all of the lines, and then where those projects are ranked within their category. So it's a thing, but it is not something that in and of itself would probably keep these projects from moving forward.
I would say if Huntersville Elementary and Cornelius Elementary were the last 2 projects on the list and we could only pick one, I think that Cornelius is going to be ranked higher because of the air quality anyway, but that might be a deciding factor, but there's enough other heavy factors that have them higher in the ranking.
My concern is how close they are to not making it.
When the final list comes out, which is going to be based on this data being input, because one of the factors is facility utilization. So once those numbers are input to the rubric, then we'll find out and we'll let you know.
And again, I want to caveat that when we're talking in the $2 to $2.5 billion range. So if Mecklenburg County comes back and says you can only have a $1 billion bond, $1.5 billion bond, I don't know, but we've run scenarios to 2.5, a little bit over 2.5, and those schools are currently scored within that.
I'm extremely concerned because, Ms. Cheek, you did just say that Huntersville Elementary technically is not super over capacity. You said only by 90 students, so that worries me.
It's overcrowded. It's not catastrophically overcrowded like in 2023 when there were 1,370 students there. It is overcapacity. It needs to have around 700 there. So
I've been watching some of the school board meetings, and I saw some of the relief schools that are going to be built, and their capacity didn't seem nearly as high as some of the schools around here. So I was kind of confused about that. The one that's over by Reedy Creek, that relief school.
So those are all 45 classroom. Our baseline has changed from even our last iteration. So the 2007 and 2013, those were 39 classroom bonds. 2017 were 45 classroom elementary schools, and so that's going forward, and therefore there appears to be, in some instances, a little bit additional excess capacity because of the difference in those classrooms. However, part of what we're doing is also looking at programs, and then where we have capacity and needs, as Board Member Cheek mentioned, those are opportunities for pre-kindergarten classes or self-contained EC classes or other sorts of specialty uses. So that can then change or be adjusted based on increasing enrollment over time.
Okay. And we definitely need extra capacity over just our standardized students, because I don't want the parents of, and the children that have special needs and special learning environments to have to go far away to attend their classes. So we need to make sure that we have capacity built into our schools up here to accommodate them without lots of driving.
Well, we do have EC separate classes at Huntersville, luckily, and some other schools, but only pre-K at 2. Huntersville Elementary is also raining through the ceiling. But I noticed that whenever we get a report about student enrollment, we're over capacity, and they're still using the 2021, 2022 numbers. And I know you said they're raw right now. When can we expect to start seeing the updated numbers in our reports when we get them from CMS?
Probably a week or two. We're doing staff leveling right now, and so that changes across the district. I don't think anything is going to shift significantly in North County, but there are shifts with staffing across the district, and of course, to the extent that we still have positions unfilled, that changes the way the capacity and utilization appear, because it's keyed off of the number of teachers versus the number of classrooms and the staff to student ratios. So those things change school to school, year to year. So we won't know exactly what the math says until we complete the staff leveling.
Gotcha. I understand all that. I'm a CMS teacher.
I
I'm an
know you
itinerant
know, not
CMS
everybody
teacher,
knows.
so I go to
Right.
all of those,
Leveling
a
is
bunch of
something
those
that most
schools.
people don't know about,
about
yeah.
And one other question is, I'm not sure if you know, but Colonial Pipeline had to pay a very large fine, and that money had to go towards education, but it goes at the state level. Is CMS looking into trying to pull that money back to where it should be? I mean, lobbying to get that money where it needs to be?
It will be part of our legislative agenda to try to get that money.
And if that happens, can we get that here in Huntersville to help Huntersville schools? Since,
I mean, that's where the issue was, so that will be something that's definitely on the legislative agenda.
all right, thank you.
Great catch on that.
I'm still feeling very uneasy about getting our schools replaced with what I hear, but I do hope that I'm very wrong. So thank you.
I know that the conversations have already started with your town staff about where you would want the school on the property that we have. So, and we've done the same in Cornelius.
How much was the last bond package?
9.
It was 926 initially, but because of thankfully the county did not calculate escalation properly, so we were able to get some additional funds to address the vast increase in the cost to deliver projects. I think a prime example of that is, so in 2010, we delivered Huff High School for $52 million. The high school that we have under construction at Johnston Road North Community House is substantially the same school, and it's costing $130 million.
Unbelievable.
Wow. Commissioner Partee?
Torrance Creek was 12.5 million, and now with middle.
40 million
40
for
million for
elementary
elementary
schools.
schools.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Cheek, I have two sons that graduated from Hopewell High School, and one played in the band, that award-winning band. He plays sousaphone, and he's now playing in college. You mentioned that Huff High School has a rating of A, but you did not indicate how Hopewell and North Meck were rated. And what criteria is used to rate the high schools?
So it's a state rating. It's a state rating, and it's a combination. It's 80% proficiency and 20% growth. And to me, that's been backwards and something I've been lobbying for. And our actual CMS legislative agenda has been lobbying for that, because if you have students that come behind and you grow them, if you've got somebody that's 2 years behind and you grow them 1.7 years, you still don't get the proficiency number, but you grew them almost double. Your teacher really busted it to get them that much growth. We have kids that grow 2 years, but they still don't get recognized as proficient. So those schools are, they're I think, I'm trying to remember my ratings in my head right now. The big thing, the reason that Huff stuck in my head, it was one of 7 schools that actually went up from a B to an A during COVID ranking. It was very unusual. I think it was 12 in North Carolina. 12 schools in North Carolina moved up.
Any other questions? Commissioner Munger?
Yeah, I think I just have one. And it's, Commissioner Kovacs mentioned earlier, we get this graph, and there's only one number I really pay attention to in high detail. You can have the number of students, so like when you're telling me 800 and this and that, it's the percentage. The percentage matters. And that's what I need to know is how many of our schools are over 100%? Because every time we get one of these, and I'm not allowed to discuss this one because it's quasi-judicial, but every time I look at one of these, it's over 100%. Every school we have. So when you do give us the numbers, absolutely appreciate it if that is in detail, that we see how many of our schools are over 100%.
You're going to have some that are not. Grand Oak only has under 500 kids, and they're not going to be over 100%. I mean, so there are some that are definitely going to be over.
It's the exception, not the rule, though.
I know, it is. And that's why the utilization piece is so important, because that factors in the total number of teachers and the total number of extra or special classrooms that are in that school.
And you wouldn't happen to know off the top of your head the number of schools over 100% in Huntersville at this time?
I can look at this number.
And the over 100% is without mobile.
Right, and again, but that's a utilization piece, Commissioner Munger. As you know, not everybody recognizes that, but as you know, so it's really tied to that staff piece. So until we can say with confidence how many, what the final allotments are at each school and how many of those allotments are filled, will we be able to articulate that utilization piece. So we're about a week or two out from finalizing the leveling, and then you'll have that. The capacity and utilization spreadsheet will be posted.
Bailey, Bradley, Huff, North Meck, JV Washam, Huntersville Elementary, Barnett kind of, potentially, Torrance Creek, probably, Blythe is 50 classrooms, I don't know, Blythe possibly. Those are all going to be at over 100%.
Thank you.
I think one thing that we have continued to talk about, and I know is on our legislative agenda, we talk a lot about impact fees at this board, Commissioner Munger, and the impact that growth has on our community and on our schools. And unfortunately, in North Carolina, we don't have the ability to impose said impact fee, whether it is from a road infrastructure perspective, a water sewer perspective, a school perspective. So we are constantly behind the 8 ball in regards to growth. And I know you feel the same pressures that we do. Commissioner Phillips, do you have any questions?
I did have somebody ask me yesterday, is Trillium Springs being relocated outside of Huntersville?
I'm going to let you talk. It is being proposed from a building, because of the building.
It's a conversation that we're having. We're having this conversation not specifically about Trillium, but about our entire Montessori program. Because for anybody who is here and remembers how we got into the magnet programs to begin with, decisions were made to place programs in older, smaller facilities with infrastructure issues, because we did not want to assign students to those schools as a result of the Supreme Court decision that we were a unitary district. So it was intentional where programs were placed. And so those programs were placed into buildings where investment had not been made and has not been made. The Board of Education has a policy that prioritizes home schools, investing in our home schools and our homeschool capacity over investing in magnet facilities. And so we have gotten to a place now where Chantilly, Park Road, Montessori are past their useful life. There's nothing that we can do for those facilities. Trillium Springs was the old Long Creek. It's already been replaced over a decade ago. And so we've continued to operate that building for that program. We have to do better for those kids. We have to do better for the staff. We have to do better for that program. And we also need to provide additional seats, because we always have a waiting list for our Montessori programs. And so we are exploring many opportunities relative to our entire pre-K 12, because we even have a 7-12 high school Montessori program that not a lot of folks know about. But in order to really strengthen that and have enough kids at the 7th grade level, we need to be producing enough 6th graders who opt into that. And so looking at all of those things says to us, we have to find better, larger facilities to house these programs without specifically building Montessori schools. So that's the conversation.
And so, Stacy, the building itself is beyond repair. There's a cracked foundation. If we lose an air conditioning unit, we would have to replace the entire electrical system in the school because it is so far out of date. So it is a problem without a solution, and I'm still talking to parents. I had a parent call me at 4 o'clock today. They're meeting with staff right now, and there's actually a Zoom meeting tomorrow at 5:30, I think, and I can see if I can get the link to your town board, if any of you guys want to be on that Zoom link, if you would like to. Because I ask about this. Parents are contacting me on a daily basis. The other thing I ask about with Trillium is where are the kids coming from? Because if they choose not to go to wherever the school might be relocated, what impact will it have on our other schools in the area? There's very few kids from Huntersville Elementary. That seems like the majority are from the Long Creek, the actual Long Creek Elementary, Barnett, a few from Torrance Creek, and there's the vast majority are actually Charlotte zip codes. There's a couple from Cornelius, I think 3 from all of the town of Davidson boundaries, but the vast majority look like they're on the other side of the interstate. And it makes sense that Barnett and Torrance Creek and Long Creek would have, there's about 45 kids from those 3 schools at that school. There's 187 kids. So I posed to staff, could we move kids out of a school that's not very crowded? Because we've got an elementary school just south of Huntersville that only has 350 kids. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want to displace those 350 kids from their neighborhood school either. So there's a rock and a hard place with this Long Creek situation. I'm so glad we have the Montessori school, but I'm afraid we're going to lose it to Huntersville, at least temporarily.
Is the Historic Landmarks Commission part of those conversations?
I think on just the gym.
It went to, like, it was built in 1932, and then it has one of those ag buildings on it that's historic.
The ag building and actually the baseball field, there's the wall there with the bleacher seating.
I went to elementary school there, so I'm aware.
Right, exactly. So that was actually built with, at the same time as the Memorial Stadium, the same rock and all of that, so same quarry. So, yeah, we're not talking about damaging the historical character. We're not talking about demolishing the ag building. We're not talking about scraping we're not even really talking about what's next for the old Long Creek, the 50s version building yet. We're simply talking about the fact that we shouldn't do school there, right? Long-term, we need to do something else. And so dealing with the programmatic piece first.
And the one question that I had, and he's heard it, and I talked to this mom that called me today about it, is I said, are the kids safe there right now? I wanted to make sure the kids are safe there right now, and they are. There's not any active situation, but we are one failure away, one system failure away from needing to do something real quick. It's because of the electrical and all that. So there is not an ongoing safety issue, because my thought was if that is the case, then let's move them in January when the semester break is, if it's that dire. But I have been told that it is not. But it is dire, but it is not critical. But it's troubling.
Thank you. My questions are for Rhonda Cheeks, and could you just refresh my memory the last time you presented in front of the Huntersville Town Board?
It was pre-COVID.
You know the year?
I don't.
How about 2015? Does that sound about right?
It may. I did actually email your mayor a couple times to see if he would welcome a visit, and I did not get afforded that opportunity.
The last time that you here and presented was 2015. That's almost 7 years ago.
Okay.
And I appreciate the update you have for CMS, but I also think that we just had a Rotary presentation up here earlier in the presentation, and one of their founding things that they work towards is it fair to all concerned. And I think to have a candidate, and I don't know who invited you, but if whoever invited you here to,
The mayor.
excuse me, out of the floor, somebody that's running for office shouldn't present in front of the public when the other candidates don't. Now, if the mayor invited you to this, that's fine. I would have to ask her, are you supporting this candidate? And if you are, I think that we've got a real problem with that. I do. And my question is the rubric that you had 5 years ago. You told us, well, we're going to give you this in 6 months to tell you exactly where Huntersville School stands and when we're going to get schools and when we're not. And we've had one delay after the other, and you can say COVID as many times as you'd like to, but we still haven't seen how you pick new schools.
Did the rubric not arrive to your town board?
Commissioner Munger?
Commissioner Munger, did you guys not receive the rubric?
Yes, I believe I did receive the rubric that was sent out. I'm trying to remember when that was. It was summerish?
It was updated, we sent it out. We did not work on capital needs at all during COVID, and you can say that that's an excuse, but it's just not what we worked on during COVID.
That's all my questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Good
And
question.
yes,
Just a general comment. You had mentioned that you might be able to forward a meeting that was occurring regarding
Yes,
Long Creek.
at Trillium.
If there are any meetings that are occurring that involve Huntersville schools, please do forward it to us. It's of vital importance to us all, and I realize it is your position to try and take care of the schools in our area, but it is a high concern for all board
And I hope you guys are receiving the update from the North Learning Zone.
yes,
All right, thank you.
thank you. We are now going to move on to public comments. Joshua Dumas. Mr. Dumas, as you come, you have 3 minutes. If you will please state your name and address for the record. And Commissioner Phillips will set the timer for you.
Got mine on. Joshua Dumas, 8621 Summerfield Lane in Cedarfield. Lived in Huntersville for about 10 years in the same location. Recently, a residential sketch plan was submitted to the town for review proposing the Greer subdivision. This proposal called for 78 new homes to be constructed on a previously undeveloped parcel of land. This neighborhood's only access was going to be a stub of road coming off Angel Oak Drive at the intersection with Summerfield Lane, which is already the only access road for about 86 homes in Cedarfield and pretty much the primary access for almost double that. Naturally, the local residents were pretty concerned about the impact this would have on our neighborhood. I'd originally planned to come here tonight to speak about the traffic concerns and the road access concerns and plead to the board to reconsider. However, late last week, the plan was withdrawn from the town and looks like it may not be moving forward. So why am I even here? Well, in our efforts to learn about this project and the town's processes, it was discovered that just earlier this year, the board moved to have any proposed residential development to no longer be subject to a quasi-judicial review and open to public comment, instead only to be subject to a staff review. If the proposal meets all of the town's ordinances, it's approved. While I see in theory why this might be preferable to the board, I'm afraid this could result in some bad developments in our town. And I believe that this proposal for Greer subdivision would have been one of, if not the first, development that would be subject to this new process. Greer would have put a ridiculous burden on Angel Oak Drive. The street is narrow, it's not striped or lined, there's cars parked on either side of it. It's heavily trafficked by pedestrians, including children, and has school bus stops all up and down it. But this was going to be the main access point for construction equipment, for contractors, for semi-trucks delivering building materials, for forestry equipment, for up to 2 years. And when completed, what would this new neighborhood do to our traffic? Well, we don't know. A traffic study was not required. Now, as a resident that lives right there, I had my objections, but let me paraphrase a member of town staff that we spoke to that said, there's no other development in Huntersville that would compare to this. It just doesn't make sense. But you know what? It met all of the town's requirements. It was on its way to approval. We should all be pretty concerned that any future development will not be looked at by the board for these types of issues, as I don't think that the ordinances and requirements in place can capture the true impact a development will have on our community. We shouldn't address each development in a vacuum and only make sure it checks the right boxes. Tonight, there's a quasi-judicial review for the Honeycutt Brown neighborhood. I suspect many of you are here for that. You'll see the plans, they'll ask questions, you'll get a chance to weigh the impact on the community. I hope you all enjoy it and take advantage of it. It's likely the last time it will happen in Huntersville. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person signed up to speak is Gordon Little. Mr. Little. Good evening, sir. As you come to the podium, you have 3 minutes. If you will please state your first and last name and address for the record.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor Bills and the distinguished panelists here at Huntersville Town serving. My name is Gordon Little, and I am a member of I live at 12316 Flatbush Drive in Huntersville. I'm a member of the Lake Norman Church of Christ, and my purpose for being here this evening is reaching out because about a year and a half ago, our church began a program supporting, and perhaps the officer sitting back here can vouch for it, but we started a program where we were supplying just a few light snacks, refreshments for some of our officers to come to our campus, to get away from things for a little while, to take a break, take a shower, or even if it's just to have quiet time. But right now, towards the last part of the school year, last year, we also took on another project similar to what we were doing right now, and that is we have partnered with the CMS school system, supplying snacks, what we call the backpack project. And in this backpack project, we were anyway, 4 elementary schools here, Grand Oaks, Torrance Creek, Barnett, and Cornelius elementary schools. We were supplying the kids there with snacks. And I got this information from Ms. Renisha Black, who is the Family and Community Services Specialist with CMS. She gave us these 4 schools, but unfortunately, at present, due to some unforeseen expenditures that our church had to partake of this past summer, we do not have it in our budget this year, but we certainly wish to continue this very worthwhile project. Be honest with you, going to these schools, some of the kids that would see me bringing the bags with the snacks, I kind of felt like Santa Claus because they were so happy and excited to see this. And again, we really believe this is a very worthwhile project for our kids and for our police officers, and we wish to continue it. But right now, we're reaching out anywhere we can, and hopefully might be able to gain some information here this afternoon where we can go. I've reached out to the 4 local grocery stores, Harris Teeter, Food Lion, Whole Foods, and Publix. And they've all sent us our Dear John letters that they are not able to participate with us in this program. So I'm just reaching out right now to gain support anywhere and everywhere that we possibly can to continue this very worthwhile project. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor Bales.
The next person who is signed up to speak is Megan Ledbetter. Ms. Ledbetter, as you come, you have 3 minutes, and if you'll state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mayor and Town Commissioners. Megan Ledbetter, 2500 Greenpoint Lane, Denver, North Carolina, 28037. I represent Taylor Morrison, and I'm here this evening to speak to you regarding the text amendment TA 22-10 regarding single-family units platted on one parcel. These developments, from a form and function perspective, operate similarly to multifamily developments with on-site property management to provide well-manicured landscaping, maintained homes, amenity centers, and activated open space in a cohesive manner. They allow creativity to activate open space and linear green belts if designed appropriately to provide gathering spaces and a sense of place for residents. Lastly, they provide a higher overall ad valorem tax value to the community, very similar to a multifamily or commercial development without the density. Typically, these communities, very similar to Taylor Morrison's programmatic approach of 1 and 2 bedroom units, are geared towards young professionals and boomers. Thus, they are not a burden on school infrastructure, and the AM/PM peak traffic is dispersed based on the dumbbell of demographics. They provide housing choices and the opportunity to age in place for the boomer population, and an alternative housing choice for young professionals that do not want neighbors above and below them and would like a yard instead of a possible just patio with a multifamily development site. And it also provides transparency to local governments as it relates to development and product versus conventional subdivisions. I would encourage the board to consider developing standards or look at specific zoning districts within the existing ordinance to allow such developments that align with the overall community vision and goals as outlined in your 2040 comprehensive plan. specifically land use policy statements in sections 7, 8, 9, and 10. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next person who has signed up to speak is Roe Lawson. Mr. Lawson, as you come, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Roe Lawson. I'm at 9515 Rickstead Court here in Huntersville. Been a resident since 2001. I am a fresh-faced candidate for the CMS School Board running in our District 1, and I appreciate everyone coming here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The next person who has signed up to speak is Ashley Wiley. Ms. Wiley, as you come, if you would please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Ashley Wiley. My address is 12435 Treasure Cove in Huntersville. Really messed with my kids, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They were like, lady, it is not 1, 2, yeah. But anyways, I want to read to you something that I've seen right outside on the wall in your town hall. It says, education in Huntersville. Education was important in a small town of Huntersville because by 1878, it had 2 schools. One was Huntersville High School, first taught by the church's pastor, Reverend W.W. Orr, in the Session House. How do you say that? Well, whatever. I need that word. But anyways, of Huntersville, Associate Reformed Presbyterian Church, the Gray Academy, operated by Hugh Gray, was located in the south end of the village across from the cemetery of the Presbyterian Church, known at the time as the Lower Church. Later, the schools were consolidated into a 2-story brick building of classic design with a large second-floor auditorium. The school with students in the 1st grade through high school was known as the Academy. Students came from many states and even foreign countries to be educated at this institution. It was one of the very first public schools in North Carolina to be academically destroyed by fire decades ago. It sat a few feet east from the present Huntersville Elementary School, established in 1938. I know that the presentation tonight by CMS was for the town to give up our right to the town charter, or HB 514. Please, Madam Mayor and Board, don't allow that to happen. Huntersville history is rooted in education. It's the soul of our community. It's our children. Please allow us to continue that. Right now we are continuously bullied into having a 100-point penalty. If it wasn't there for a retaliatory purpose, why would they penalize us? Don't let them bully you. Don't let them force you to submit. Right now in Huntersville, there's a little boy that doesn't even believe that there's good police officers because of CMS. There's a principal who hurt a kid. They don't care. All they do is just transfer them to the next building over or the next zone over, while the parent and the poor little children are left to wonder, what do they do? There is zero accountability. Please, ma'am, don't let that happen to our kids. Keep Huntersville, Huntersville.
Thank you. The next person who has signed up to speak is Miss Verona Wynn. Miss Wynn, as you come, you have 3 minutes, and if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening to all. I am Verona Wynn, and I live at 13219 New Haven Drive in Huntersville's Pottstown community. Tonight, the board will discuss and consider the adoption of legislative goals for 23 24 time frame for the years 2023 and 2024. I stand to commend you for citing a town-specific legislative goal to do an affordable housing study to support the provision of funds to the town of Huntersville to allow it to create its first affordable housing plan. Hopefully, you will approve this goal tonight with a real desire to reduce the need for affordable housing in our town and not gentrify old neighborhoods. Since I have witnessed firsthand Huntersville's neglect of Pottstown, I have little confidence in the town's sincerity to deliver a fair and equitable plan to meet the housing needs of the town's most vulnerable communities. Here are a few suggestions for making a fair plan that will increase affordable housing in Huntersville. 1, do a fair and accurate, transparent study. Commit to hiring staff, persons to engage residents in the study and planning and execution of a housing plan that is affordable. Allow a panel of community residents to oversee the plan from beginning to end. Commit to at least $12 million of funding to execute such a plan. Build housing at prices that will make housing affordable to those with incomes below the 60% of area median income. Include grant and loan money to refurbish, remodel current homes in your vulnerable communities. Scrap, that is tear up, the town's current East Huntersville development plan. Follow the county's lead in making a strong, affordable housing plan. Develop policies that put people above money. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. No one else has signed up to speak this evening. Are there any agenda changes? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Is there a second? Second. I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, we will now move to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Thank you. There is a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. We'll now move to public hearings. Item 8A. This is a request to continue a public hearing to November 7th. In regards to the question of designating as a historic landmark a structure known as Cowens Ford Davidson College Monument.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
Motion to continue this public hearing to November 7th, 2022 at Town Hall
At what time?
at 7 p.m., sorry.
I'm sorry?
At 6 p.m.
So the motion is to continue the public hearing to November 7th at Town Hall at 6 p.m.?
Yes.
And is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, we will continue that public hearing to November the 7th. The next item on the agenda is to, did I miss one? Hold up. Request to continue a public hearing to November the 7th. A request designating as a historic landmark the structure known as General William Lee Davidson Monument. Is there a motion?
Motion to continue this public hearing to November 7th, 2022 at 6 PM at Town Hall.
Second.
There's a motion, there is a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries, so that will be continued. Item 8C is a public hearing on designating Rural Hill directional marker. This request is to also continue the public hearing to November the 7th. Is there a motion?
Motion to continue this public hearing to November 7th, 2022 at 6 PM at Town Hall.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Boone?
Yes, I have a question for the town manager of how come we are delaying these public hearings?
I'm going to refer to Mr. Jack.
Thank you.
So staff sent in the legal ads to the newspaper. Unfortunately, it got bounced back to us. By the time we realized it was bounced back, we did not hit the deadlines that we needed to advertise. That's what happened on this.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll now move to item 9A. Whew. All right, this is a quasi-judicial hearing. We will be conducting an evidentiary hearing and consider decision on Honeycutt Brown subdivision sketch plan. This is a request by Toll Southeast, Inc. to subdivide 239.37 acres located at northeast of intersection of Gilead Road and Irvin Cook Road. And Mr. Pete, give me just a moment as I pull out the handy-dandy verbiage for the hearing. All right, this hearing is a quasi-judicial hearing on the application of the Honeycutt Brown subdivision sketch plan. Quasi-judicial hearings are evidentiary in nature. Only parties with standing, including the applicant, property owner, local government, and individuals who can show they will suffer special damages, have the right to participate fully in the hearing. Special damages must be particularized, separate, and distinct from damages to the public at large. Special damages are a fact-specific injury. While proximity may bear weight in the determination of special damages, proximity in and of itself is insufficient to grant standing. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Other individuals may, but are not required to be, allowed to speak as a witness. However, they will not be allowed to participate fully as a party, such as by questioning other witnesses or by calling other persons to testify. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. General witness testimony is limited to facts, not personal preferences or opinions. Certain topics require expert witnesses, including projections about impacts on property values and traffic impacts. Individuals providing expert opinion testimony must be qualified as experts and provide the factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. Mere conclusory testimony lacking the foundation of the expert's opinion is insufficient to establish the evidence the existence or non-existence of a fact or conclusion. The board must base quasi-judicial decisions upon competent material and substantial evidence in the record. Competent evidence is evidence that is sufficiently trustworthy and reliable and that is legally fit and acceptable for consideration by the board. Speculative, irrelevant, or vague evidence, non-expert opinions as to something that requires an expert, and non-expected hearsay evidence will likely not be competent evidence. Material evidence is evidence that shows that the standards will or will not be met. Evidence is substantial if it is relevant and regarded by a reasonable person as sufficient to support a specific conclusion. Speculation, unsubstantiated fears of the community, or vague assertions do not constitute substantial evidence. Quasi-judicial hearings are constrained by the standards in the ordinance and the facts presented. Even though the board may hear other evidence, it is not objected to. The board should rely on competent material and substantial evidence in making its decisions. The board will recognize the applicant as a party as well as the property owners, if different from the applicant. Are there any other persons? Let's just stop here. Mr. Pete, you're representing the town, so the local government. Is the applicant here this evening? Yes. Okay, can we go ahead and get them up here? And is the property owner here?
I believe they're represented by several.
All right. Who would like to come and be sworn in to represent the property owners? If any. You don't have to. That's fine. Okay. We'll get to that. Sorry, I'm trying to follow my script here, so I apologize for the quiet. Okay. Just a moment. I thought we were close to swearing you in. It's been a bit, so it's like a page or two on down the road. Hold on a second. The parties to this case are entitled to an impartial board. A board member may not participate in this hearing if she or he has a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close relationship with an affected person. Does any board member have any conflicts of interest to offer at tonight's meeting?
Madam Mayor, I need to be recused.
All right. It is the policy of this board that a recused member shall step down from the dais and be excused from the room. The board member may return for the next matter.
Madam Mayor, can I make a motion to recuse?
Do we need one? Okay, yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to recuse Commissioner.
Phillips.
I'm just standing over there.
Second, I think.
There's a motion, there's a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, Commissioner Phillips, if you wouldn't mind please stepping down. Thank you. The parties to this case have rights for any ex parte communications to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication about the case outside of the hearing. That may be email communications as well as conversations with parties, staff, or the general public. Does any board member have any ex parte communications to disclose? Seeing none. Based on, we do not have any, so we're going to move on. All right. So, I'd like to call on planning staff for the presentation of their staff report. Actually, this is backwards in my papers here. So let me swear all of you in first, and then I will turn it over to you to input your staff report. I think the Bible is under there. I meant to make myself a note the last time. Thank you. If all of you would come up, anyone who needs to be sworn in at this point. It's for all the hands. All right. Right hand up, left hand. Thank you. And I was looking at it backwards, too. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. I'll just sit here.
may need it.
Now, Mr. Pete, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address, et cetera, for the record, along with your staff report?
David Pete, Principal Planner with the Town of Huntersville Planning Department, and at 105 Gilead Road across the street is Planning Department's location.
Thank you.
We ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, Mayor. We'll get the quasi-judicial hearing information. I want to submit the staff report into the record. The applicants for this particular subdivision for sketch are Toll Southeast Incorporated. You can see on the screen, this is in the hatched area is a general location of the properties that are involved. They are north of Gilead Road, primarily to the east of Irvin Cook Road, but there are a couple of parcels on the west side as well. You can see the parcel numbers there. You can see the zoning. The project as proposed is 100% in the transitional residential zoning district. Just a quick insert of the site plan into some aerial photography. You can see a very large floodplain on the eastern side of the project, or the right side of the image. And then the Winfield subdivision would be further to the right. Above is also vacant land, or farmland, if you will, but that is owned by Mecklenburg County for a future park. And then on the west side of Irvin Cook Road, you have some remnant large parcels, some farm area, and then a couple of larger subdivisions as well. The essence of the request for the 239 acres is for 358 lots. That is right at the 1.5 dwelling units per acre. I've already mentioned the zoning. 100% of the lots would be single family, and they are proposing 48% open space. 40 is required to be eligible for 1.5, so they have exceeded that. You can see in the three color schemes that are distributed throughout the subdivision that we have a proposal for 52-foot, 62-foot, and 72-foot wide lots. So you have to have a mix, and you can see that the averages for lot width and lot size have been satisfied as well. These are some blow-ups of the entire development here in sections. If you'd like to look at anything in specific, I'm happy to come back to it, but I'm just going to move through. There's nothing of any specific merit that I will show at the moment from those, but again, very happy to go back if you'd like to. Want to start with the 2040 community plan. You can see in the upper right, there's an outline of some of the goals and policies that are supported or that this project would dovetail into. You can see that the area in question falls under the moderate density, and that is where the yellow and the brown hatch area is. The red dot seems to have moved over to Winfield somehow. I'm not sure how that happened, but apologize for that. It should be just over the green to the left. But you can see moderate density in the 2040 community plan is looking at 1 to 3 units per acre, and this is proposed to be 1.5. Also, in addition to the 2040 plan, there is the Beatties Ford Road Corridor Small Area Plan, and it designates this particular area as residential area / subdivision. And so it is consistent with that as well. And then the only other element I was highlighting from the small area plan was from the transportation plan. You can see that improvements to Irvin Cook Road as a minor thoroughfare are contemplated in that plan, and they would be making upgrades to Irvin Cook Road for their frontage, which we can elaborate on if you'd like to see. This is the TIA requirement. TIA was required. These are what came back, and you can see the area in red. Those are the improvements that the developer will provide. And again, you've got improvements on Irvin Cook Road for their frontage. And then where Irvin Cook Road intersects with Gilead, you can see that there are some improvements there in terms of turn lanes. The full list of those is here, and I won't belabor that unless you'd like to. And obviously, Stephen Trout, their engineering department, is here as well to answer any further questions on that. Here is the report from CMS. You can see that they are identifying approximately 183 students generated by this project. And the full report is in your staff report as well. So I've got two versions of the staff recommendation. This one is bringing you current from the version that went to the planning board. Everything in red represents the update. And the first thing that I want to go over in the first bullet is the reason why we're having this quasi-judicial hearing is there are a couple of modification requests to the standards of the ordinance. You can see there listed Road H from F to K, Road H from G to M, and a cul-de-sac, which is Road O, are all in excess of the typical standard in our ordinance. The allowance in the zoning ordinance does allow for changes due to environmental impacts that are consistent, modifications that are consistent with the policies within the ordinance. And so to illustrate where those are, you can see in the upper left in the red, that is part of, that is Road H that is moving around a existing farm pond, and then some wet areas that are shown there in the green. And as it gets close to the county's parkland there in the curve, that would be one of the modifications. The second would be on the upper right, you can see that also in red, and that one again has a creek crossing and the very large floodplain on the entire eastern portion of the development. And so stubbing or connecting not only across the floodplain but into a Winfield subdivision that doesn't have any stub streets to connect to is not a permissible item. So we were supportive of that as well. And then the cul-de-sac, which is down at near the bottom of the image, again, it is crossing a wet area, and to minimize that, it needed to move over into that area closer to the larger floodplain. So those are the only modifications that were requested. I've got all of these items here, and I can go through them if you would like, but what I did do in the interest of tonight's hearing is I did a quick bringing current of what is outstanding. And so very quickly you can see, other than the modifications, the DOT report and what they may require, we still want to have that in terms of detail. We are comfortable at this stage recommending moving forward with final action because these are both DOT roads, both Urban Cook and Gilead, and whatever DOT wants to see is going to have to happen. But they have already indicated through email that they are generally satisfied with the TIA. The other thing is the catch-all items that we always bring to you, which are the other town transportation comments that may exist and other red line comments that may exist would be satisfied. Again, I can go back to the full motion if you'd like and bring you up to speed on how everything was addressed, but the applicants have addressed everything, sort of taken it off the table, if you will, and I'll leave it to you if you want to go through those items. So in a simplified way, the three elements for subdivision sketch review are, is the application complete? And staff finds that it is. The requirements of the ordinance have been met, and we find that if the three modifications are granted, that it would, and then we could recommend approval based on that. Back in September 27th, the planning board reviewed the application, and they recommended by unanimous vote to send this to you, supportive of the conditional motion by staff. Any questions of the request, the proposed site plan, or any of the items that I have reviewed for you?
Or do you have any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Munger?
Sure. Two real quick questions as I was reading through the packet. Related to policy EOS 8.3, where are we in the amount of and type of urban open space still being discussed with staff? Because it looked like there were several lots not within the quarter mile of urban open space.
So that was an initial comment in red line review. There were a handful on the upper east corner that were not near an urban open space as they had proposed the urban open space. And so through some back and forth, through even since the planning board, we've worked with the applicant, and they have made modifications, and I can show those to you if you'd like. But that is, the secret is they didn't move the lots closer, they created urban open spaces that were in proximity, and so that has been satisfied.
Okay. And second question, the specific reason this is quasi-judicial, is block length waiver. The three block lengths we have, 1,729.61, 1,184.23, and 1,370 feet. What's the threshold for a block length waiver?
So we classify this particular subdivision as a major subdivision. It's not an urban situation. So you're looking at about 800 feet. And we do have some wiggle room in the ordinance to go beyond that, but not to the extent that these are proposed due to the very large environmental features that they have to accommodate. So you look at the setting, it's all contextual, and it is just a recommendation based on professional judgment through the ordinance.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Boone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Pete, could you go, I think it's your second or third slide, and it's not in the agenda packet, but it is part of your presentation. This, we'll start right there with the dotted line going through the future park. You're showing this connected into the Hugh Torrance Parkway?
No, this subdivision is not connecting to Hughes Torrance Parkway.
Okay.
The dotted line that you see there, right underneath the word Hugh Torrance, that is completely within the county's property.
Okay.
So that future road, if it were to occur, would more or less bisect the county property.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question, Mr. Pete. Understanding that the block length waiver is a standard is 800 feet. What concerns do you have as staff with regards to the potential of speeding, et cetera, along those corridors? I ask this because we have been repeatedly asked by developments, once they are in, they're asking now for some type of traffic calming. And what can be done to ensure that that's not going to happen with this subdivision?
So we do take that into consideration as we look at any subdivision, and a couple of things would come to mind here. The 62 and 72-foot lots would have what I would call, first off, they're going to use one of the town cross-sections, either 51 feet or 57 feet, to allow for on-street parking. The only place that it would be required is where you're going to have the 52-foot lots. The other ones would be infrequent. But you also notice that they are curvilinear streets. They are not straight in terms of encouraging the speeding that could go through there. So we make sure that, and I can show you through that graphic that showed where the blocks were, that kind of illustrates. Of course, a cul-de-sac is a dead-end situation, but through the use of our cross-sections that we find effective in serving all of the lots, through the curvilinear nature of the roads, and then through the fact that you're not moving through this neighborhood to go to another neighborhood or another complementary use. You're sort of within this neighborhood. The traffic is kind of held. But that is what we've done through the design, working with the applicant. We certainly would not want to see retroactively any other traffic calming installed. That is something that's always available as well. Did that answer?
It does answer my question, but I still struggle with this road network and the length of these block length waivers that are being requested, for the sheer fact that we continue to be asked to put in traffic calming.
And I do,
Especially with the this one over here on the top, Road H, the 1729.
the one thing that I would offer, again, just part of our conversations completely, is a block is from intersection to intersection. And so you're looking at here to here. And again, this wetland feature, how would you create another street, another intersection to solve that? And so by virtue of the length of that feature and this feature, you have a challenge to try to get through there and not be more detrimental to the environment that it is working through. So we certainly understand that, and the ordinance takes that very seriously. But that's why we have to look at what are we given to work with within the boundaries of the project. So we're comfortable making the recommendation to you, but I hear you loud and clear about the concern there.
Well, I guess my question to the board is, am I the only one that has this level of concern with that length?
Actually, I do, but not with those roads. I'm more concerned about the long, straight ones,
Yeah.
but they're not up for consideration, so.
Right, right. Okay. Any other questions? Would like to hear from the applicant? You did take the time to get sworn in and all, so.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Levesque with ESP Associates, with a planning and engineering firm working with Toll Brothers this evening. 20484 Chartwell Center Drive in Cornelius.
Thank you.
Office location. And then also with Toll Brothers, Jamie Poe is here this evening as well. Very, very good questions on the block length, and thank you for bringing that up. That was a lot of working with staff on trying to figure out what's the right balance of this unique property with all this wetland features and natural features, as well as county property to the north, large floodplains to the east. So really nowhere to connect to, nowhere to do stub roads with the northern property. So looking at a delicate balance there, we tried to do a couple maneuvers of the roads, but looking at curvilinear approach to the layout was something that was very important to us and working with staff. And we hear you loud and clear on the speed concerns, and Jamie has mentioned they're comfortable working with staff to do speed tables or speed bumps or whatever meets the requirement that the town is comfortable with as well. But that is, it was definitely, this is a very unique site from that perspective because of those constraints. But overall, addressed the open space comments and also worked with them on the layout itself and the curvilinear approach on some of the other roads as much as possible. So myself, I'm here, Jamie, and the rest of our team to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for the applicant, Commissioner Partee?
Good evening, Mr. Matthews. How are you this evening?
Good, thank you, sir.
And Ms. Sloop, keep me within my scope of questioning, if you can. Just some questions regarding the corporation itself. Toll Brothers Southeast was incorporated where and what year?
I'll ask Jamie with Toll Brothers too.
Just for the record, just for the record.
Yeah, so my name's Jamie Poe. I'm the division president for Toll Brothers here in Charlotte. That's a good question. That entity has been an entity that we operate in here for a number of years. We've been in Charlotte for over 25 years. A specific date of incorporation, I don't have that with me today, but I'm happy to follow up with that.
Thank you. Approximately how many developments has Toll Brothers Southeast built in North Carolina?
Good question. Let's see. We have, I'll give you some general numbers, but we have, we've been in Charlotte since early 2000s. In the Charlotte metro market, we have probably done over 30, 35 large-scale communities, mostly in the South Charlotte area. So South Mecklenburg County, Southwest Mecklenburg County, Union County, Lancaster, York County and Fort Mill, et cetera. This is our first large project on the north side of the Charlotte market in Huntersville. We have been very excited to move to this part of town. I think there's a lot of growth opportunities for the company, a lot of housing opportunities, and we look forward to doing more in the Northeast.
You answered one of my other questions about how large a development have you built in the past. To present, with the present economic recession, what's your anticipated target date to break ground?
Yep, good question. So we are working on all of our approvals. The next step for us would be to engineer the project. That would take about 9 months, maybe up to 12 months. It is our intention to break ground as early as next summer, but more likely into the fall of 2023. The next step after we break ground is to do all of the horizontal development for the initial phase of the project. That generally takes about 9 months or so. And then we start building our models and the early homes in the community. So I wouldn't see any residents in this community until 2025. And we anticipate the project will take us 5 to 7 years once we start construction of homes.
Thank you. Do you have a contingency plan to redesign the Honeycutt Brown sketch plan to meet the decline in the housing market?
Generally, we don't focus on redesigning approved plans. Economic environments will change the pace of a project. So we go into these types of projects assuming a certain number of homes per year, and the economic cycle may delay that or may accelerate that depending on where we are at that point in time.
And lastly, have you decided on what the TIA recommended as far as improvements to be implemented to handle peak traffic trips?
Yes, sir. We worked with a traffic engineer on developing a traffic study that met the town requirements. I did submit it to SCDOT and get their approval on that traffic study. And it did look at all the surrounding intersections that they recommended studying and improvements, along the frontage road as well as on Gilead and Irving Cook Road. So we have looked at those. Our traffic engineer has looked at those and deemed those to be acceptable with the town.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 3 questions. The black line dots that are going into the cul-de-sac and just north of there, is that the greenway or trails?
Yes, sir. Great question. Along the eastern side of the property where you see those dash lines, that is the McDowell Creek Greenway, and we are proposing connection points from the community down to where that future greenway is going to be. So this will be adding additional trails to access to that greenway.
And what will those greenways be made out of?
The main greenway is going to be done by the county. That's going to be asphalt or concrete, whatever the section is the county designs to. Our connections, which we'll be installing, are going to be a larger soft surface trail going down there.
And the HOAs who are going to take care of those?
Yeah, the HOAs will be responsible for maintaining everything within the common open space.
Okay, then at the south end of it, you have a little, the bottom cul-de-sac, you have a little line in there. What's that all about?
A line in the cul-de-sac?
There you go, right there.
Oh, that is going to be reserved for, depending on once it goes into design, for potential emergency access if it's ever needed.
Okay, and then you have one block that nothing's there. Is that somebody that didn't want to participate in the program? Or?
I don't know if you want to, you're asking about the property owner.
Oh, I got you. Yep. That is a separate parcel that did not participate in the, the aggregate combination of plats here, or parcels here.
Thank you, that's all my questions.
I have a couple of questions for you. First, this shows 2 greenway connections, and the staff report says 3.
There are, I think it says trail connections.
It does say 3 trails to future county park
Yeah,
to the north.
that is different than the greenway, and I
Okay.
don't know why that just happened, but, so they're here, here, and here. So that's what that was referring to.
Okay.
And I think I pointed those out specifically because the other 2 were so abundantly clear. That
Right.
They jumped off the page.
Thank you for clarifying that. In your answer to Commissioner Boone, you said that these trail connections were going to be soft surface. Therefore, they're not ADA compliant?
The neighborhood trails.
Correct.
Is that right?
The 2 neighborhood trails, that's what I'm asking. They're not going to be ADA compliant for wheelchairs or easily accessible for seniors with walkers, et cetera?
They will not be a hard surface trail, so not meet the requirements you're talking about, no.
I think that does concern me slightly, since the greenway, the main greenway here with the McDowell Greenway will be that hard surface. I would love to see residents here be able to access if they are, have a disability of some sort. I would just encourage you to seriously consider that as we continue to have this conversation here this evening. I have another question for Mr. Trott. Could you give us an update on Gilead and when Gilead West is to be expanded out? Because 358 homes, that's a lot more traffic.
And sure, just a question to make sure I understand what you're asking. Are you asking about the town-led project for Gilead Road West, which is between McCoy Road and Winfield Creek Parkway?
That's correct. That will stop at Winfield Creek Parkway.
Yeah, it stops just to the west of Winfield Creek Parkway. We're currently starting the right-of-way acquisition phase. I anticipate that to take a couple of years, along with utility relocation, and then move into construction approximately 2 to 3 years from now is our current time frame.
2 to 3 years from now. And then your time frame is 5 to 7 years to completion. Is that correct?
Yeah, from the time that we break ground to the time we close on the last home, about 7 years, 5 to 7 years.
And so there are no additional concerns regarding Gilead past our project to the west?
So up on the screen, the development completed a TIA. NCDOT required a TIA for this development, and so the town deferred to DOT for that. And I believe they've reviewed and accepted the TIA, and the improvements shown up on the screen were the result of those recommendations.
So you don't have an issue with, I'm asking you specifically as our expert in transportation.
This will definitely add traffic to the project. The Gilead Road West project that the town is doing is going to add a lot of capacity to Gilead Road to the east of here.
Okay. So how long then do you think it will hold up? Any projections?
So if I can recall, I need to go check, but I believe the traffic projections we looked at were to 2040.
Okay.
For the project, we didn't just look at what the project would need at the time of build-out, but we look well beyond that to see what's needed. So that's the time horizon the project looked at,
Okay.
if I recall correctly.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kovacs?
I just want to know what that green part is.
The green part.
Which one? Yes. Let me go back to the, where's the overall? To the site plan? Yes, please. Yes, okay, so this is the western side of Urban Cook Road and then north of Gilead. And that is an area of the property that has some constraints in terms of the size of it. So we looked at trying to incorporate that into the development. It made more sense to do open space, also with some of the structural, we're dealing with the soils and looking at the construction and being able to use some soil there over in the regular side, the eastern side of the development. So we needed to keep it as green space and open space. And we have committed over there, you'll see on the plans, to, based on what Mecklenburg County requires or needs, to dedicate a greenway over there, leave acreage for that, as well as a trailhead or a parking area if they need it. So just kind of leaving that in the plans that they'll commit to that, and if it's needed in the future, that can be done. And then we did, Mayor, I did want to address your question on, try to go to the overall, other way, sorry. Here it is. So very good question on the access down the hard paved surface down to the greenway. And what we would ask is if it would be sufficient if we could utilize the northern connection and do that hard surface so there is the ADA access down to the greenway, and then leave the southern connection soft surface just because of some of the environmental constraints down there. So that was what we could propose to help alleviate some of the concerns with getting ADA access down there.
I think that would at least give the citizens who live in that neighborhood access in two different ways. So if the board is also amenable to that, the northern greenway connection being a hard surface for ADA compliance. Yes? Looking at my board. Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Yes?
If I could just touch on something that Commissioner Kovacs and yourself were asking previously. I think it would be helpful to just point out that there are here, help me out, Matt. There's a couple, maybe there. Oh, and there's one there. Those are mini circles. Those are mini traffic circles. And so staff and the applicant, again, equally concerned. We don't like to see the straightaways, but intersections do work within our ordinances. That in and of itself was something. But we did see opportunity for that to be a little challenging, so the applicants were able to put those in. Yeah, so.
Absolutely does make a whole lot more sense now, and those do slow people down. People will run through a stoplight or a stop sign, but they'll stop at yields, so, at roundabouts. Any other questions? Commissioner Munger?
Ms. Loop, keep me in line. I'm looking for simple yes or no questions for the applicant. And this may have already been addressed by what you said, and you can already tell me if I'm wrong. Would you be willing to commit to making the 3 trail connections ADA compliant?
Are you talking about on the north?
Yes.
That one.
The 3 north ones? Yeah. We have not designed the trail system. We have just, we've just put in the plan to accommodate for it. So without fully understanding the engineering, I would say we could at least agree to one of them so that there is access to the north side, and would be open to all 3, assuming engineering-wise it made sense.
So at a minimum, you will commit to one?
We would commit to one, yes.
Okay. And again,
So there would be one on the north side, and then, as we said, one on the east side into the greenway.
cool, all right. And I'm gonna ask Ms. Loop to watch what I'm saying again. Would you be willing to commit to setting aside funds to implement traffic calming features at a time up to 10 years following the completion of the final dwelling?
Commissioner Munger, is that if needed?
If needed.
Yeah, I think we've illustrated that there is some traffic calming already in the road network, but we would be willing to work with the town on any additional traffic calming that would come up as we develop the community.
I guess my problem is gonna be that the issue's gonna arise after everything's done and you guys are like, we're good.
Well, generally, we control we're the declarant for the homeowners association, so we have a vested interest in standing up the homeowners association, making sure that it's operating effectively, and we don't hand it back over to the residents until the last few homes are left to close. So at that point, there is a resident-led board, and those types of issues that would percolate as a community is growing are issues that would be presented to us by that board, and we would address those as we're handing over the community. So I think we'd be comfortable suggesting that we would be working on those issues.
Let me put it a different way. Would you be willing to commit if, while the building is still occurred, even up to the last home, if a study was done and it proved that there was traffic calming measures required, would you be willing to commit to funding that?
Traditional traffic calming, speed bumps, those types of things, we'd have no issue committing to that.
Thank you.
Ms. Sloop, should that be a little more specific? Or are you good with what?
So whenever the motion is made, all of these additional things would need to be incorporated in the motion.
Any other questions? Okay. Are there any, hold on, let me get back to my handy dandy. Was there anyone else who wished to speak this evening? I did. Okay. Thank you. All right. Seeing that there are no other questions for the applicant, the board will now begin deliberation. The evidentiary hearing remains open so that the board may ask clarifying questions if needed. As a reminder, this board is tasked with deciding if, based on competent material, substantial evidence presented at the hearing before this board, this proposal meets the applicable standards. If the applicant meets their burden of producing competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will be met, the burden shifts to the other parties opposing, which no one has spoken out against. All right, so at this point, board members, do you have any other, would you like to take a moment to deliberate amongst yourselves here?
I think I have a motion if it's appropriate.
With all the,
Thank you. So, and Emily will, or Ms. Sloop will keep me in line.
Please proceed.
And this is going to be a long one. All right. Board finds the application complete. The town board finds the application complete. The town board finds the Honeycutt Brown subdivision sketch plan consistent with adopted public plans and policy and complies with all applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance. The Huntersville 2040 community plan and the Beatties Ford small area plan as stated within the findings of facts in parts 2 through 4 of the staff report. Specifically, the proposed Honeycutt Brown subdivision lies within the Huntersville 2040 community plan, moderate density and open space future land use character area, and is supported by policies LU 12.3, EOS 4.3, EOS 8.2, EOS 8.3, EOS 10.1, PS 8.1, T 3.1, T 3.2, T 5.3. The town board also recommends approval of the requested block length modifications from 4 Road H from Road F to Road K not to exceed 1,729.61 linear feet, for Road H from Road G to Road M not to exceed 1,184.23 feet, and Road O from Road F to cul-de-sac not to exceed 1,370 linear feet. The recommendation is contingent upon approval of the water concept plan, working with staff to provide acceptable open space types for urban open spaces B and E, providing staff with a rough grading plan for the parcel west of Irvin Cook Road, addressing all outstanding town transportation comments, providing and addressing all NC DOT comments that are applicable, BMP embankments being kept out of the stream buffers, and addressing all remaining red line comments. Additionally, applicant will commit to making the one trail connection ADA compliant on the north side, and will commit to setting aside funds to implement traffic calming features up to the completion of the final dwelling if deemed necessary.
Commissioner Munger, did you also add the one ADA compliant trail to the east? I missed that, thank you.
Oh, no, to the east, my apologies. And one ADA
Connected
rail
to
connection to the east,
To McDowell.
to McDowell. Yeah, I modified that because I saw the red here, and I assumed that was an update. Yes. I read that word for word. So, okay, I'll wait for them on that one. We're sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. It's complicated.
Based on the So 1779, that's the number the planning board.
But you changed, according to these red line comments, it says 1729 right up here. And that's what I made.
From the plan.
And that is the correct number?
That's the number from the plan. I can't
Oh,
say
okay.
it's correct. So the plan has the number in red. The planning board motion was not to exceed that number.
So they gave a little bit more of an.
They did a measurement at the dais the night of their meeting with the applicant's assistance, but admittedly, it was not computer generated.
Okay.
So I don't want to say more than that, but that's
Sure.
a planning board motion, and that.
I'd like to modify my motion on that particular number to go to 1779.
Do we?
I said 1729 when I first. Looking for some guidance. Ms. Sloop, can you give me some guidance, please?
So if the plan includes that specific number, that means that's what the applicant is requesting. Planning board apparently changed the number.
So I'm sticking with 1729 is what I'm hearing. Okay, and I'd also like to, I apologize, I'd like to incorporate the findings of facts in parts 2 through 4 of the staff report.
I know that you have moved into a different area.
Yes.
Discussion. The representative's attorney is asking to clarify something. I'm just leaving, I'm asking you.
We didn't get you sworn in. Is that fine? Let me swear you in, please. Let me get my, just make sure I never mess it up. Right hand, thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Susan Irvin for the applicant, 19726 Zion Avenue in Cornelius. Just one clarification. When we were speaking earlier with Commissioner Munger about the traffic calming, I believe what we said was in accordance with a study performed prior to the last lot going in, and I just wanted to be specific about the traffic calming, parameters, and so it would be as needed in accordance with the study performed prior to the completion of the last lot, if that's acceptable to Commissioner Munger.
That matches the intent, yes.
Munger, it's usually a year after the subdivision is complete that the town takes over the streets for maintenance. What if we make that decision at that time instead of when the last?
I was going based off what the applicant was had openly
Probably
agreed to.
legally correct then.
So you will need to amend the motion to
Okay,
include that.
but I don't have to read the whole thing, right?
Just amend it to include that language.
All right, so on that one, the applicant will commit to set aside funds to implement traffic calming features based on the outcome of a traffic study done prior to the last home being completed. Traffic calming study. I apologize.
I'll amend my motion.
Your second?
My second.
All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Now, yes, I'm not finished. Okay. Staff will draft, and I will sign a final written decision to reflect the vote and reasoning for this decision. I'd like to thank everyone attending the hearing regarding the Honeycutt subdivision sketch plan, and we welcome you to stay for the other items on the agenda. And if you are leaving now, please do so quietly. Commissioner Boone.
Motion to let Commissioner Phillips back into the board meeting.
There's a motion and a second to bring Commissioner Phillips back to the dais. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you all for coming this evening.
I'm just gonna stand here.
As we continue to give folks a moment. All right, we will now move on to petition TA 22-10, single-family detached homes and duplex house types on multi-building sites. Mr. Farber.
Madam Mayor, I need to request to be recused from this matter.
Commissioner Phillips is making the request.
Motion to recuse Commissioner Phillips.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Okay. Mr. Farber, I will turn it over to you now.
All right. So I'll submit my staff report into the record and get started. So staff is proposing a text amendment to Article 8.2, one principal building on a lot. The current Article 8.2 states that only one principal building and its customary accessory buildings may be erected on any lot, except that multiple buildings which, taken together, compose a single principal use that may be erected on a single lot as permitted by the district regulations and described by building and lot type. Requirements of subdivision ordinance section 6.8 apply. We are proposing to add the following sentence at the end. The multiple building exception shall not apply to single-family homes and duplex house types that are not a part of a retirement, community, or congregate care facility. Planning staff does recommend approval based on the amendment being consistent with policy LU 11 of the 2040 Huntersville Community Plan. We believe it is reasonable and in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance because it will protect the unique character of the existing housing stock. It is consistent with the definition of single-family home and provide options for future transactions. The planning board Board also voted 7-2 to recommend. And if you guys have any questions, I'll go ahead and answer those.
We'll open it up for questions. Commissioner Boone? Commissioner Kovacs? Commissioner Munger.
See where I rate tonight. So unfortunately, I was not here during the Hamlet meeting. Not that my presence would have changed the outcome of that meeting, but I'm hoping for a bit of latitude in my next questions. Also want to give a shout out to our former Commissioner Brian Hines for bringing some of these concerns to light for me. So my question is, in these rental neighborhoods, would it be possible for property owners to sell off a portion of the development rather than the entire development?
So in terms of property transactions, that would be out of the town's control. Only the property owner and the potential buyer would have any say in property transactions. That owner of that property would determine how much they were asking for the property and also how much of the property they would be putting up for sale.
So hypothetically, if the property owner were to put in, if the property owner, and in this case, typically a situation like this, that property as a rental unit would be transferred over to what's referred to as a REIT, a real estate investment trust. And if the REIT got themselves into sort of a cash crunch type situation where they desperately needed to liquidate assets, there's nothing the town could do to stop them from selling those assets at well below market rate and thereby negatively affecting surrounding homes.
So I can't speak to property values and what the sale would do to those because I'm not a certified real estate appraiser. But no, the town has no control over whether or not a property owner decides to sell their property.
Okay. I guess I just want to put it as something to the board that keep that in mind, that is one possible outcome.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kovacs?
It's not so much a question as a comment, and I know I was definitely part of wanting this to be written, but after looking at it and thinking about different situations across town and stuff, I think that there needs to be a little bit more flexibility, or us kind of clearly defining things that could possibly exist, you know, for lots with deed restrictions, irregular shapes, environmental considerations, or the topo. And maybe it would be a little more appropriate if we did like a acreage cap, you know, if it's below 5 acres, it could be rental, rather than having 45 acres or something like that. So I kind of feel like it's pigeonholing too much into one, where there are some certain situations where it just kind of makes sense.
Well, the purpose of our text amendment is to allow, like, any product that comes forward, any subdivision, that it's going to follow only one ordinance, the subdivision ordinance. So there would be no, all the subdivisions coming forward would go all by the same rules. And currently yeah, go ahead.
I would also just like to make a point of clarification. So this particular text amendment is dealing more so with the one principal building per lot requirement. It has nothing to do with whether or not it's rental or owned by the individual owner. So I just wanted to make that point of clarification, that this rather is dealing with having one principal building on one lot rather than whether or not it is a rental unit or a unit owned by a property owner.
Commissioner Boone?
Madam Mayor, I've got a motion, if you'd like to hear it.
Please.
In considering the proposed amendment, petition TA 22-10, the town board recommends approval based on the amendment being consistent with land use 11, LU 11.1, LU 11.2 in the 2040 Huntersville Community Plan. It is reasonable and in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance because it will protect the unique character of the existing housing stock. It is consistent with the definition of single-family home and provide an options for future transactions.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Proti. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And those opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Is there a motion to bring Commissioner Phillips back to the dais?
Motion to bring Commissioner Phillips back to the dais.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. Come right on back, Commissioner Phillips. We're now going to move to item 9C, Urban Workplace and Shopfront Building Types Zoning Ordinance Text Amendment. Mr. Semino, it's so good to see you.
Thank you, Mayor. So at the work session on October 3rd, staff heard what we thought the town board wanted to see with clarity on the ordinance. So the intent was to bring to you what we have drafted, and if this looks correct, then we will take it to the Ordinances Advisory Board, public hearing, planning board, town board. So the way the ordinance reads today, it just says residential up to 50% of the first floor area or non-residential only. So the proposal is to add number 6, which specifically says first floor non-residential areas shall include floor area used exclusively for non-residential uses and shall not include any floor area that contains or is shared with residential uses such as storage, mechanical rooms, etc. Any floor area devoted partially or wholly to serving residential uses shall be considered residential floor areas. So that was just to clarify that where there is shared space, that just goes over to residential. So that's the simple ask is, and we don't have to have the word Smith perfectly tonight. It just, are we moving in the direction that the board asked us to do on October 3rd work session?
May I open it up for questions?
Please, it's here for discussion.
Commissioners? Commissioner Partee?
Mr. Semino, just can you tell me what, I have an idea what the definition is, but the definition of hatched area?
The definition of hatched area?
Oh, yeah, and on page, where it says lot type and urban workspace, building placement, parking, vehicle access.
Have that, yes, I'm sorry, I did not, I don't have that particular slide here because we weren't changing that page, but I believe you're.
Yeah, I know, but I just wanted to,
Yeah.
just for my own
That
edification. with
hatched
the
area is intended to show, this is generally the location where the building will go, and that hatched
Right.
area in the illustration, that's the intent.
Any other questions? Well, Commissioner Boone?
Madam Mayor, I think the planning staff is on the right track, and I'd like to see them take this to the Ordinance Advisory Board and shuffle it through them and bring it on back to us.
I would concur with you, but I would like to hear from everyone else just to make sure, yes, they are on the right track. Commissioner Kovacs?
I'm trying not to be salty. So do we have to use non-residential as opposed to commercial?
Seeing as how the ordinance today reads residential up to 50% or first floor area, non-residential only, I would say you gotta matches with the illustration of the building and the building height. So we've got to be consistent. Let me try to understand what are we trying to make sure we're covered here? Because as long as we have consistent, use the language, whether it's all commercial or whether it's all non-residential, that's what counts. So
I'm just thinking about our last meeting where it was back and forth about commercial, non-residential. It should say this, it should say that. That's just why I was asking.
So, I mean, I guess the question becomes, if we're talking about commercial use, from our standpoint, the commercial use is the commercial use and everything associated, whether it's bathrooms, storage, mechanical, whatever. The way this ordinance is written, if there's shared spaces because it's a mixed use and there's any type of residential using those shared spaces, that counts all towards the residential side of things. I don't know that that's really even getting to where, what you're asking, but I would dare say I think that using the term non-residential works just the same as saying commercial, in my opinion.
Commissioner Munger?
I guess this is probably just more of a follow-up on what Commissioner Kovacs is. Probably one of the things we're looking for is, and I do appreciate the effort, it's how do we not make North State happen again? And right now, when we look at the 50%, and I totally understand, you know, there's going to be bathrooms, there's going to be maintenance closets, things like that that are specifically related to a commercial entity located within that first floor. If we're looking for a mixed use, our desire, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of line for other members of the commissioner, is we want that commercial. We want commercial to drive that. That's part of what we strive for when we end up, we understand that developers coming in and saying, well, I got to have residential up to be able to make my money, but we want that commercial to get people to come into our community to generate tax revenue. And we want to be able to say, we're approving things to get commercial in there to drive local people activity and get things happening. And when we see that non-residential, it frustrates us because we're like, but what if it's another print office or a mail shop or something that's completely useless to anyone outside of that entity? And that's, I know we're trying to get there. It's just a matter of how do we word it? And if you tell me we just can't, I'm going to have to live with it at the end of the day. But that's what we're trying to go for. We want commercial.
So if I may, Commissioner Munger, I would say that in that regard, because non-residential can include commercial, but commercial doesn't always necessarily include all other non-residential. So I would say that if you want purely commercial on the first floor, you would need to speak in terms of how much percentage-wise or square footage-wise commercial, and specifically state in the motion, when the motion is made, that this percentage, XYZ, would be purely commercial out of the non-residential approved square footage, if that makes sense. So the more specificity and the more clarification in the motion itself, and also having specific notes added to the conditional rezoning plans to also make those clarifications, would be a way to protect against, I guess, the misunderstanding that we would call North State.
When I was during Vermilion Village, I feel like I learned about that through this. Like, anything beauty related is not considered commercial. It was, no, because I had asked for commercial and I was told, no, it has to be non-residential. So if you want anything that does like nail, because you know, I only really care about beauty stuff, let's be real. Anything like that, then it wouldn't be considered part of it. And that, is that not correct? Because of the licensings and all the fun stuff?
I mean, that starts the debate of what's commercial. I mean, what are you really, are you looking for retail? Are you looking for restaurants? To be frank with you, I'm talking from a planning standpoint. I think even light manufacturing is great. If I'm making jewelry, I'm actually making something, I mean, that adds value in our opinion. And as you look at downtowns, that's what they're trying to encourage. People that make clocks, people that make jewelry, people that make things that are unique. And so that's why I tend to shy away from the term commercial, which is retail and goods and maybe restaurants and things of that nature and services. Again, if somebody has a service, an insurance service, I mean, I don't see a problem with that. I think that's part of what you're looking for in your downtown, and in my opinion. So that's why we tried to shy away from the term commercial and stick with the non-residential side of things. What the intent of this provision was to do is to make sure that no more than 50% of that first floor is totally residential, whether, and that is, you know, private space. When it's residential, it's private space. Anything else is, I dare say, would be good for business. I guess you could even say the brewery over here is manufacturing. I mean, that literally is manufacturing over there. So I don't know if that adds any clarity. We are absolutely happy to work on language that the board feels might further target what you're looking for, but I would just say from our standpoint, if you want a healthy downtown, you have all kinds of different businesses, and whether it's a service business or an advisor or light manufacturing, retail, restaurants, all of those things add value to your downtown.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing was that what I heard from Ms. Sloop is being very specific and making sure that when the board is creating their motions, that every little detail is laid out. And that not only is every little detail laid out, but that we make sure that it's noted in the plan. Commissioner Munger.
Sure. And I think we had mentioned this during that last meeting. I think it is incumbent and almost absolutely mandatory that when we're making these motions, Jack looks at it, Emily looks at it. And that way, if he's looking for, well, you know, there's a note here you haven't really considered in your motion, we know. And if Ms. Sloop says, you know, you may want to cover this ground, we know. And not that we do it, and I mean, I just did it on a quasi judicial. It was kind of a little off the cuff making that motion. So I'm as at fault as anyone is. I mean, you can point to that specific, but we need to really nail these motions and make sure we're getting everything we want. So I will make a better effort to have my motions passed by you, Jack, and by Emily or whoever you deem appropriate. But I think we should all do that.
So does number 6, is this the direction we want to add? Send on to the Ordinance Advisory Board?
And again, just to make sure that everybody's aware, this doesn't commit us to this exact language. If there's clarity, we can do clarity changes all the way up to the night of the meeting, because we'll advertise it and say changes could occur. But as long as we know we're heading in the right direction, that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
Final question. Jack, are you residential up to 50%? Are we locked in at that 50%, or is that negotiable?
Well, so it's locked in. If the ordinance is adopted, that's locked in. The only way to change it is if somebody asked for conditional rezoning and asked for some relief from that, which is actually what happened at North State. They wanted to not achieve 50%, and so they had to go through conditional zoning to go forward with that. So does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Could we change the 50 to, let's say, 25 if we wanted to?
Oh, you could, yes, you could change it to whatever you desire. I would be careful on that, and here, the North State, I think, in my mind, is a good example. It was an L-shaped building. The commercial street is really Gilead Road. That side street by the parking deck is not a really great commercial street, not now. And that was a vast majority of that first floor. And so if we mandated, say, 80% commercial, we would be having 80% commercial all down that, you know, the front street and that back street. And it might not be appropriate for business. I guess a counter argument to that would be, well, if somebody doesn't like it, they could go through conditional zoning and say, hey, because my land is shaped this way, I want it modified. So that's always an out to try to get out of that. I would just, I would say if that's something you want us to, if the board is interested in seeing maybe reduce the commercial or residential area down, we could scan some other codes and just see what's happening and then give you some advice, and we can work on that while we're taking it to the Ordinances Advisory Board. So we're happy to do that.
Thank you.
I would be in favor of that.
Thank you, sir.
Everyone else? All right. Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, the second part of that, the second part will come back on November 7th.
Okay.
Policies and motions. Just wanted to make sure, because that's not on here.
Mr. Semino, do you have everything that you need?
We do, yeah. We've got what we need. Thank you
Okay.
so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We'll now move to item 9D, legislative goals for the 2023-2024 legislative biennium. So The Government Affairs Committee, which consists of Commissioner Phillips, Commissioner Munger, and myself, along with Mr. Williams, Ms. Sloop, and Ms. Huffman. I believe I got everybody. Did I? Well, and Mr. Roberts. I don't want to leave you out there. I forgot about that for just a moment. We walked through a list of goals for consideration. They are in your packet this evening. And we'll open it up for any discussion around that, but we would like to go ahead and consider adopting these so that we can then turn around and for this support statewide goals, we would then submit those to the League of Municipalities for, as they go through their process as well. Commissioner Phillips.
So in the process of doing this, Commissioner Kovacs and I had a random conversation that we were both passionate about something, which are safe haven baby boxes that go with facilities that are operated by governments. It can be at a fire department, sheriff's department, police station. So in the process, found out that Ashe County has been approved to do this, but while talking with their sheriff, learned that there's a lot of obstacles in the way of this. And this is something that's passionate for our town to do, but now knowing that there are hurdles for people across the state to be able to do this, I think that it should be added as a town-specific and a support statewide specific, especially in more rural communities that don't have the same access that the people in suburban areas do if we're going to do something across the state. I feel like that we should lend our voice and our population to try to make this more for all 100 counties and not just specific to our town.
So are you recommending that we add safe haven baby boxes under government responsiveness to needs of citizens?
Yes, ma'am, under town-specific and support statewide.
Okay. Is there any discussion around that? Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The state of South Carolina has something called the Samuel Law, and it is exactly what this is, but they've been doing this since 2015, and I definitely think it's something that we need to look into.
Commissioner Partee?
Commissioner Munger came to me before the meeting and explained to me that the state does not have a safe haven or the access for mothers who want to give up their child at birth. And I'm totally shocked because I have had the unfortunate time when I was in law enforcement to have to find babies in garbage cans and homicide, abandoned babies. So I will wholeheartally support this effort to push this agenda forward. Thank you to Commissioner Munger, Kovacs, and Phillips.
Commissioner Kovacs?
I kind of echo what Commissioner Phillips said, and she was right, it came up in a random thing. I showed her this video, and she said, I've been wanting to talk to somebody about this, and I said, talk to me about it. So we were really excited, but before we brought it to our fellow board members, we wanted more information because it's kind of a big deal. So Commissioner Phillips was able to get in contact with the other county, and I really think this is something that we could all work together to better our community.
Well, I'm certainly in support of adding it to our legislative goals. I do think we still need to go through the process of gathering all the correct information, et cetera, so that we can then submit the goal along with everything else that we have in front of us this evening. Mr. Williams, would you be willing to help do the work? Thank you, sir. Any other discussions around the legislative goals? And if not, is there a motion? Commissioner Phillips.
I would like to make a motion to consider adopting the legislative goals for 2023-2024, including safe haven baby boxes.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Nope, motion carries. Now, Mr. Williams, we have a lot of work ahead of us. We will now move on to mayor and commissioner reports. I am going to start with Commissioner Munger this evening.
feel like I'm on an apology tour. I do want to apologize for not forwarding the rubric to this board. I did do it during this meeting. Apparently, life caught up to me, and I am sincerely sorry about that. You now should have the rubric in your mailboxes. If you do not, contact me personally, and I'll make sure you have it. Last Wednesday, I attended the Public Arts Commission meeting where we discussed our progress on pursuing an ASC grant and the possibility of installing peace poles at one or more of our parks to promote local school spirit. It's actually really cool. I hope you guys like it. And as always, if you have the opportunity to give, please consider supporting your local nonprofits. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Partee.
Thank you, Mayor. On Wednesday, October 12th, I had the pleasure to speak about my law enforcement career before the Huntersville 101 class at the police department. The class was giving an introduction on community policing and operations. I want to thank Ms. Kim Strickland for the curriculum. On October 18th, greenways, trail, and bikeways will meet at the Rotunda at 6 p.m. As always, I will always advocate for gun safety, especially in the homes where guns are stored and children are present. Accidental, intentional discharge causes serious injury and death. The Huntersville Police Department has free gun safety locks. Organizations and individuals can contact the police department or me at dpart@huntersville.org. Let's be child safe. Finally, I want to bring awareness to a nonprofit organization named Cool Kids Clubhouse in honor of Dan Jensen, located here in Huntersville. Cool Kids Clubhouse mission is devoted to improving the quality of life for pediatric cancer patients. Check their website out and donate. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Kovacs.
First update is from the Lake Norman Chamber. There was an outstanding business expo this past Tuesday with 120 businesses and organizations represented. I got to be there all day, and it was pretty fun. I was there for both Huntersville Connection and Lake Norman Chamber and saw a lot of you there, met lots of businesses in our area. This Thursday, October 20th, the Chamber will host the annual Public Safety Luncheon honoring the most outstanding police and fire officers from Cornelius, Davidson, and Huntersville, along with the Crime Stopper of the Year. The event is held at noon at the Northstone Country Club, and seats are available, but you must RSVP to the Chamber by Wednesday so they have appropriate food count. This Friday is a special Focus Friday at 8:30 in the morning on Medicaid expansion and Certificate of Need reform. There are multiple speakers from Atrium and Novant, Elizabeth Allen, North Carolina Senator and co-chairman Senate Healthcare Committee, Jim Bergen, North Carolina Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tim Moore. So call or email the Chamber for Zoom credentials to be able to join in on that, and for a complete listing of groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, professional development seminars, and networking events, please visit lakenormanchamber.org. So that's for my public comments, but I did want to respond to Commissioner Munger and say that I appreciate you sending that email to us, but it's a little late to ask CMS now, but I wish that we were all included on emails like that, like Mr. Jeter does when he sends out his stuff. So I do wish that stuff that comes from CMS that impacts all the board would be sent to us all.
Commissioner Boone.
No report.
Commissioner Phillips.
Yes, ma'am. From Visit Lake Norman, next lacrosse Carolina Fall Shootout was October 9th. Youth lacrosse tournament was held at Richard Berry Park. 26 teams played, 35% of which were travel teams, including 3 teams from Missouri. And then an update, Alma Adams satellite office hours at Huntersville Town Hall begin tomorrow. They are the first and third Tuesdays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and walk-ins are welcome. Ms. Nguyen, I want you to take note of this, please. Some of the things that they will be addressing are issues with federal agencies and inquiries. Emergency assistant regarding passports, provide resources in the community if the issue does not involve the federal agency. And most importantly, listen to issues constituents may have to have their legislative issues and concerns heard. And that's all I have, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you. My report this evening, I will start with MTC. John Lewis informed Charlotte that he would be resigning as CEO of CATS. His last day will be on November the 30th. Assistant City Manager Brent Cagle will serve as interim CATS CEO while they conduct a national search for the next CATS CEO. Charlotte has engaged a national search firm to lead the process for the CATS CEO position recruitment. Along with Brent and other members of the city's leadership team, they will determine the best approach to recruit and fill CATS executive positions based on discussions with stakeholders, including the MTC, as well as the search firm. So I just wanted to give that update. The next MTC meeting is next Wednesday, October the 26th. And from the EDC, currently there are 26 active projects. 2 were added today, 6 added last week, and they've been doing cleanup. They hosted a business mingle last week at Pester Pack, and the speakers included Boomerang Water, Insight Architecture, Atom Power, and Bank of America. And that mingle was focused on sustainability. So it was quite interesting to hear from each of these organizations regarding sustainability and what they're looking for as they grow into the future. And then the EDC also met with the new Director of Industrial Recruitment for Electricities. The last thing that I want to do is commend Parks and Rec for their adult recess. That was quite fun, being out there the last time they hosted that. That was not last Friday, but the Friday before. And they had axe throwing, they had the bull riding thing, they had kickball and dodgeball and all kinds of crazy games, and the adults were out there having a great time. So the next time Parks and Rec hosts an adult recess, I encourage every one of us to be out there participating. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry.
I just want a closing comment.
Oh, absolutely.
Planning Board Member Jody Wright, thank you for being a long hauler today. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anything else? Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor? All right, none opposed. Good night, Huntersville.